Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
I mean, there's only one faith, for example, that kills you or wants to kill you if you draw a bad cartoon of the prophet. There's only one faith that kills you or wants to kill you if you renounce the faith. An ex-Muslim is a very dangerous thing. Talk to Salman Rushdie after the show about Christian versus Islam. So, you know, I'm just saying, let's keep it real.
Well, I guess I have a girl for you, Pam Geller, you could maybe meet. No, I really disagree with you.
I don't know what that means.
Well, she's an Islamophobe. But I'm
not an Islamophobe. That's wrong. I am a truth lover. All religions are not alike. As many people have pointed out, the Book of Mormon, did you see the show?
No, it's hard to get tickets.
Okay. Can you imagine if they did the Book of Islam? Could they do that? There's only one religion that threatens violence and carries it out for things like that. Could they do the Book of Islam on Broadway?
Possibly so, but
possibly so. Tell me what color the sky is in your world.
Here's my difficulty with your premise here, Bill, and that is, look at how religions over history have had things done in their name that have been terrible.
Absolutely,
right.
But we're not in history. We're in 2013.
Right, but what I would tell you...
You're right. During the Middle Ages, I would say Christianity was the bigger problem.
If I may, though. You are making an error in that Islam has over 1.4 billion adherents. There's a heterogeneity to it. Are there extremists who are horrible people who would slit your throats? Yes, but there are also folks that are fine, upstanding people.
Of course.
I'm very worried that you have a national audience where we're promoting Islamic hatred.
We're not. No, you're wrong about that. And you're wrong about your facts. Now, obviously, most Muslim people are not terrorists. But ask most Muslim people in the world, if you insult the Prophet, do you have what's coming to you? It's more than just a fringe element.
At first, U.S. Attorney Bill Killian tried to keep from talking over the protesters. Then he gave up and kept his head down, following his prepared remarks on the lectern, as hundreds in Manchester, Tennessee shouted, "Go home," and called him a serpent. The reason Killian's being called a traitor is because of a local incident that he condemned. It's the underlying reason this educational event on hate crimes was held here. A county commissioner posted a picture on Facebook of a man with one eye looking down the sights of a shotgun. The caption reads, "How to wink at a Muslim." Killian didn't mention the viral post specifically, but said that someone doesn't actually have to follow through for it to be a hate crime.
If someone makes threats of violence, that is not protected speech, and they will be prosecuted.
Killian did not delineate when a threat makes that leap to a punishable offense. He also has declined to be interviewed since slipping out of the meeting. The booing continued through the presentation by an FBI agent and by Muslim advocate Sabina Muyadeen. She brought up a case that was prosecuted as a hate crime. 3 men were convicted under federal statutes.
2007, a mosque was burned down in Columbia, Tennessee. Shame on you.
Whenever you have hate crimes being applauded by an audience, you got to wonder what's happening there.
The problem of extreme Islamist theology. Now then, I want to ask you, to what extent do you think Islamic leaders are in denial?
I think more needs to be done by Muslim leaders on that specifically religious problem. The vast majority of Muslims and mosques, for example, in this country are, of course, peaceful, law-abiding, the positive aspect of Britain. But there is a small problem, clearly, with hate preachers and with very radical terrorist ideas, because we've unfortunately produced absolutely dozens of British Muslim terrorists over the last 10 or 15 years. But there are wider issues around how this came about. So, for example, Christianity has been mentioned. David Cameron said this was a Christian country a few years ago, but priests who graduated with me from Cambridge 20 years ago told me this is a post-Christian society. And I think that conversation in terms of what are the unifying values underneath a multiculturalism That debate was never fully had. It had been open in the last few years, and with citizenship classes at schools, etc. But of course there was a lot of racism as well in the 70s and 80s. Growing up, one of the reasons myself and colleagues and others actually turned to radical Islam, it gave us a sense of identity and protection. Racism was very common in London in the 80s. I'm pleased to say my own children don't experience that racism, but it was an experience which I shall never forget, which scarred me for a long time, to see open racist abuse, and we had race riots in those times, and to see your own parents, for example, being openly abused by people working in the public sector. That is something which alienates communities a lot, and communities are entitled to have their own languages. And we have a situation now where young black and Asian men are still far more likely to be unemployed and far more likely to be stopped and searched by police, for example. These problems feed into wider problems, and they can't be ignored.
You bring your agenda actually today. Well, my question is, what we say, can we say what the problem about what people when they see women wearing scarf? Is that something when they behave with her racism? Is that something coming about economy issue? I don't think so.
Well, I have no problem with it.
Sorry, you have your agenda. You finish it. I don't know if you finish it or yeah. But I'm me from Honduras Plain. I've been here 2 years. Nobody sits with me in the bus or near than me because I'm wearing scarf. So can you explain for me how you guys what answering for that?
Context of white supremacy. Justice. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. We will be back tomorrow. Today's date, first of all, Tuesday, June 18th, 2013. So I have been told we will be back tomorrow, Wednesday. Now, I am a bit clueless because one of our guests has not confirmed for tomorrow, so I will try to contact them again to see if we can get confirmation, get a little bit more certainty about everything that Wednesday might hold for us. But it looks like we should at least have one program tomorrow evening. We will explain that a little later in the program. One quick detail that I will get out. We have a new easy way for folks if you want to participate in the program, if you want to call in. I know we have people who listen who are not in the States and have more dialing issues. There's a very easy way. I will post the link on the web page, but you should be able to call in for free. Even if you just want to listen, to give you another option, I'll do that once we have a break in the program. We will get right to work. Our guest for today's broadcast, I will give you a little bit about his background and then tell you how I found or how I first heard about our guest for today. Our guest, he has a PhD in Islamic history and works as a consultant, researcher, and author on the topics of Islam, Mahdism, Jihadism, Shi'ism, other Islamic sects, and Caliphate and eschatology in general. I may have mispronounced one or two, my apologies. During the Reagan administration, he was an Arabic linguist in the 101st Airborne Division and was later commissioned and trained as an Army chaplain, and he also, in addition, author, one of his books, Holiest Wars, Islamic Mahdis, Their Jihads, and Osama bin Laden. One of his texts, he also has written a wealth of articles. They are published all over the web. You can go to a variety of different sites and check out his content. He has written about the Boston Marathon bombing, among other topics. Very active on getting his work out. Now, how exactly did Gus find our guest for today's program? I was posting content for the program, I believe within the last 10 days or so. I was posting content and I checked online, and I think I went to my Twitter page, God Awful Twitter, and I looked down, and I think I was just looking for what was trending at the time. And I think this was before the finals started, if folks are watching Game 6. This was before the NBA finals started, and I think that was trending. And I saw this post where this person said that they called a talk radio program, and they were I guess, sharing their views. Maybe, I guess they were talking. Let me make sure I have still not heard the program. I did ask. I haven't heard the program. So all of this, I'm just going off what I was told. That said, he said he called in to this sports talk radio program. The hosts were white, I believe, and they were talking about who they were going to be rooting for in the final, Spurs Heat. And our guest, I think he called in, he said he was rooting for the Spurs. Now, somehow, this, he said, got to him being accused of being an angry white man because he said he was rooting for the Spurs. He wanted to see them win as opposed to Miami. Now, I haven't heard this. I don't know all the details. I wished if anyone can track it down for us, I will play it on the program. I would love to hear it for myself. And since he's been a guest on the program, I would love for you all to hear this exchange as well. But he says he will report honestly on what happened and how this came to be. We also look forward to hearing some of his views on his books, his writings with regards to Islam. Joining us live, I believe, from Georgia, Dr. Timothy R. Furnish. Dr. Furnish, are you with us?
I am, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you for sharing a bit of your Tuesday evening. I apologize if you wanted to be watching the game. Your Spurs could be triumphing and taking home the big prize this evening, and you are hanging out with us. Thank you kindly. Anything you think listeners should know about you before we get started?
Well, I just want to say that was a very, very, very gracious assessment. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, it was ironic that you know, I happened to make one day, I believe it was the day the playoffs, the finals were supposed to start. It was that afternoon, and I was going to pick my kids up from camp. And you know, I listen to a lot of sports talk radio when I'm not doing, you know, all that other weird stuff that you told your listeners about. So I just thought I'd call in since they were saying, you know, who are you rooting for tonight? And it's a show in local show in Atlanta, Chuck and Chernoff, and I sent you the link earlier. I had checked, but it looks like these guys only archive, you know, when they interview Matt Ryan or something like that. They don't archive, you know, when small potatoes like myself call in. But the question they were positing was basically it was LeBron centric, right? Which I guess sort of makes sense considering he's by far the best player in the NBA. But it was, are you for LeBron or against LeBron? And I simply called it and said, I don't really care that much about LeBron. I like Tim Duncan and the Spurs. So, and you know, there was a couple of other little things said, and you know, I said, well, why? I said, and I was just trying to be sort of jocular, and I said, well, I like a team that plays team ball. I like Tim Duncan. You know, I like Parker, and I'm tired of guys in, you know, Gatorade commercials winning all the championships or something, just sort of offhand like that. So you know, I'd had my say, so they hung up on me, and then I switched back over and started listening on the radio, and as soon as they hung up on me, one of the guests, and again, both these fellows are white, one of the guests said, angry white man, which I'm sure he just threw that out there to sort of like, you know, stir the pot. But, and then that's what I twittered on. I mean, I mostly thought it was kind of amusing. I mean, at first I was a little annoyed, but, you know, one white guy calls another guy an angry white man. But I just thought it was an interesting dynamic because, I mean, again, the whole sort of starting position was, are you for or against LeBron? And I came with a different view. Well, I'm not really for or against LeBron. I'm for Tim Duncan. So I was a little perplexed as to how I could be. First of all, I really wasn't angry. I mean, I could ascertain that through the radio. But I guess you could tell I was white by listening to him, and definitely I'm a man. But I found it very interesting and rather ironic that I specifically said I was for Tim Duncan and the Spurs, but I get labeled angry white man. Like, wait a minute, isn't Tim Duncan black? I'm pretty sure he still is. So, and that was just sort of an offhand thing. That was kind of funny, and I threw it up on Twitter, and then obviously you found it. So, and we've been talking since. So.
Right on. Again, I wish I could have heard the exchange, because see, just even that bit of information right there, that's more than I had. All I had about this incident was what he posted online. I did go to the website that he sent me. I actually went to the website before that, and I couldn't find it either. I couldn't find the archives. Like you said, maybe they don't post all of the content as an archive or what have you. But just based on what you said, if that's accurate, they were, I guess, framing it as a, are you for LeBron or against LeBron type thing. Based on what you heard, I'm sure there were other people who were also calling in expressing their views. I'm pretty sure some other people probably dialed in and said that they wanted to see the Spurs win, or, you know, express something that they were not rooting for Miami. Did anybody else get accused of being...
Well, no, sir, not that I heard. I do have to say, though, I only listened for a few minutes after that because I wound up having to get out of the truck, and I had probably heard 10 minutes of the show before I called in, so I probably only heard 15 minutes total. But I believe, if I recall, and my memory may not serve totally, but I believe I was the only person that called in and said I was rooting for the Spurs. Pretty much everyone else was rooting for LeBron to win another one that I heard. So, but again, that was just a 15-minute span, and they were doing it for 30 minutes. So, I don't know what the whole demographic spread or fan spread was on that. So, anyway.
Okay. I would find it hard to believe. I can't say that I listen to a lot of talk radio. I certainly haven't listened to any talk radio in the last 2 weeks. I didn't hear that program. So, but my general experience is that unless you're in Miami or unless you're in the town of the team that actually plays, it's generally pretty rare for it to be that lopsided where everybody that calls in is rooting for one team. You generally have some people who call in who either just don't like them or they're rooting for the other team or whatever. I would be curious to see how other people that dialed in, if they said they were rooting for the Spurs or whatever, were treated. I also would be curious as to exactly what words were used. What did you say when you expressed, because even what you articulated just now about you're tired of, you said the guys with the Gatorade commercials.
The Gatorade commercials winning the championships, you're right. Of course, that could include a whole lot of folks, not necessarily on the Heat or not. But
I'm not aware. I'm not aware
of that throwaway line at the end, so I'm sorry.
Okay. I get number one. I'm not aware that LeBron James has a Gatorade commercial. Does he have a Gatorade commercial?
No, I guess I was thinking of Dwayne Wade's commercial.
Oh, okay. Because I know I was thinking, you said it was LeBron centered, right?
Well, that was, again, the way that the Coast posited. The question posed to the audience was, are you for or against LeBron? Call in.
Okay.
That was the way they put it. And again, I said, I'm neither one. I'm for Tim Duncan and the Spurs. So.
Okay. One quick thing.
I should have said Danny Green in the Spurs, but who knew he was going to do what he did? So.
Who knew? One thing I would toss in, though, just if it was a LeBron James-centered conversation, you said that you did hear that. You called and expressed you were for the Spurs or what have you, and I guess at some point added that you're tired of the guys with the Gatorade commercials winning every year. I would say one thing that I think is important, they just had a pretty long segment. I think it was maybe a month or so ago. LeBron James, after he won the MVP this season, they had a pretty lengthy segment, and they were saying it kind of sticks out that LeBron James doesn't really have very many commercials. And they were comparing him to the other elite players in the league right now, and they were saying people that have accomplished a lot less than James, who's a multiple-time Olympic gold medalist, 4-time MVP. I mean, his credentials are pretty off the charts, and he really doesn't have a lot of commercials. And they were even trying to question, why is that? Is it that people still don't like him? Is it the decision? I mean, they spent a lot of time talking about how he's kind of an anomaly in not having a lot of commercials. Did you hear this segment?
Interesting point. No, I had not heard that. Interesting point.
All right.
And again, that may very well be true. I mean, who knows? I'm sure there's somebody that does statistical studies of how many commercials guys get, but yeah, but that may very well be true. But again, I don't want to make too much of this. But I mean, you found it interesting, and I guess, and in some ways I do too. But again, I just thought it was kind of an interesting thing for, again, a white host to say to, someone who I guess you would presume is a white caller, since he labeled me as such correctly. But I just think I don't want to make too much of it. I just, sports talk radio talk show hosts, with a couple of exceptions, generally aren't, how should we put this? They generally aren't rocket scientists. So, their job is to stir the pot and to get everybody fired up and get people to listen. So that was probably just part of what he was doing.
Okay. One thing that I would also note, at one point it sounded as if you said that it was actually a caller or a guest who said that you were an angry white person, and then at other times it seems as though...
No, it was the host. It was one of the two hosts.
Okay.
Hosts. It's called the Chuck and Chernoff Show.
Okay. Hang on one second, though. Hang on one second. Yes, I would encourage the listeners to go back, because I think at one point, and maybe I got confused, but to me, it sounded as if you were saying it was a caller and not the host who suggested this.
I misspoke.
And that's why I said I would like to hear this for myself, because I haven't heard. I can only go off what you say. And through the correspondence, because the reason that this ended up being a program what he said about LeBron James and all that, that in and of itself wouldn't have been that interesting to Gus either. Right. The reason that this became a program is because as our dialogue continued, and I asked, do you have a link where I could hear what happened? And he said he couldn't find it, blah, blah, blah. And he said, do you have a reason to doubt what I'm saying? And I said, well, it's possible that you could be deceiving us. And Dr. Furnish, he said, well, wait a minute now, how would I be deceiving you? And I said, well, I haven't heard the link. I don't have any evidence. I don't even know you. I'm just reading the tweet that's something that you put online. I think that's reasonable. Hang on a second. I'm talking.
Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
And I think that is reasonable. I think for anyone out there in the listening audience, there should not be a presumption that just because this is something that someone tweeted, I should not take this as gospel. I don't think that that's being unreasonable. So,
I think that's totally true.
Dr. Furnish, we continue with our exchange. And he said that, or I was accused of saying that he was being dishonest. And I said, well, wait a minute now, because I didn't say you were being dishonest. I didn't accuse you of anything. I simply said that it's possible you could be deceiving us. And this, I'm not going to go, I can post the Twitter exchange. If you follow me on Twitter,
that's fine. That's a fair representation.
The reason that this became an issue and the reason why I said, I would like to have this person on the program is because this is another illustration. Now, I went through the purpose in this Twitter exchange of saying more than once, it's possible that you could be deceiving us. And this carried over even into emails. Now we're having longer discussions because we're not limited, where Dr. Furnish is continuing to assert that I accused him of being deceptive, that I accused him of deceiving us. And I had to continue. He even went through and got the actual tweets and put them in the body of the email where I had said possible twice, and he still omitted the word possible to say that I was accusing him of being dishonest.
I don't believe I omitted the word possible.
You did not. I can read exactly what you said, Doctor. In fact, I will do that so we can get the exchange. Hang on, I want to just read it, and then I'll let you go, because I feel like this is ridiculous, and it could be you consciously, willfully practicing racism. I'll read the tweet, and then I'll give you an opportunity to respond. No, I would like to read the tweet, and then I'll give you an opportunity to respond. The tweet says, I'm scrolling down, trying to get the thing open here. Okay. So, he says, I did not use the word, this is Dr. Furnish, what he wrote. Mr. Lawrence, no, sir, I did not use the word possible is right. I actually want to read the tweets here so you all can get the exactly what was said. You can get the whole exchange, what he said, the whole accusation, everything. All right. Forgive, I'm having to scroll back through a couple days worth of emails. Actually, sir, I think I was paying quite close attention to words and accusations. The cows, this is what I said. Thanks for checking for me. I was saying, Mr. Furnish at the time, it's possible you could be deceiving us. I was just hoping to hear the exchange for myself. He says, I guess he left out his post. I said it again. I believe it's possible that you're not being honest. So he goes on to say, true, you simply suggested I was deceiving and not being honest rather than flatly accusing me of such. I think that's a small difference as to be meaningless. But please note, I had never heard of you or your radio show before I tweeted what happened on ATL Sports Talk Radio, and thus could not have aimed any alleged deception at you in order to fool you. He goes on quite a bit. The word possible still has not been written out. I responded by saying, this is not a meaningless or small difference. You omitted the word possible. I wrote it in both tweets. I didn't suggest that you were deceiving or not being honest. I recognize deception and dishonesty are possible even from you. We strive for precision and exactness in our dialogues, especially when accusations are being made. Please make an effort to be accurate and honest when you speak with us. He wrote back, Dr. Furnish, he says, no, sir, I did not use the word possible no, sir, I did not. The word possible is right there in what I copied, albeit not in bold. I will, of course, be accurate and factual in my statements. He goes on. For me, the whole crux of this was that, again, I did not accuse Dr. Furnish of anything. I simply said, and I will still say, it's possible he could be deceiving us. That's possible. I don't have any evidence to the contrary. I will end there. Would you like to respond, Dr. Furnish?
Well, you really thought I was deceiving you, I don't think you'd have me on, so I really don't think you think I am. So, all right, look, here's my original tweet. I found it here on 6 June. I wrote, hashtag LeBron, hashtag racism. Called AM 680 ATL Sports Talk, quote, rooting for LeBron in finals, unquote. My, quote, for Tim Duncan, unquote, got, quote, angry white guy, unquote, response. That was my tweet. So, and again, you know, look, I had never heard of you before you found me on here, so you must have had me in your Twitter feed. So I was totally unaware of that. And again, unless I was like generically trying to deceive everyone on my Twitter feed, then I mean, there's no way I had it targeting you. So, but I think you probably think I'm telling the truth, or you wouldn't have me on. So.
I didn't say that you. I didn't say that you were targeting me. I will say it again. It is possible that he could be deceiving us. I don't know. I said again, I haven't heard the program. There's no way I can confirm. We have had individuals on the program before who were not being honest. So it's not that I have a problem having someone on the program who I suspect might not be telling the truth. I just make an effort to point that out to listeners. And I understand. I will say again, I would say for anyone that's very suspicious to me, someone having a problem with acknowledging that it is possible in this universe that someone could be lying, even if that someone we're talking about is me. The fact that there's resistance to that stands out to me. At any rate.
So Mr. Lawrence, look, I'm trying to be polite and honest and intellectually, you know, have some intellectual integrity here. So, you know, we've discussed this. Now, if you don't think I'm telling the truth, then there's no point talking to me, okay? So, just can we move forward, or can we get past this?
I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to move forward. Can I move forward? Are we ready to move forward, or do you want to continue talking?
Yes, sir. Let's go forward, shall we?
Okay. And I will say again, he could be deceiving us. Listeners, keep that in mind. I, again, have no problem having an individual on the program if I'm not sure whether or not they are telling the truth. Keep that in mind as we proceed. As we move forward, you have written quite... Oh, wait a minute. Are you a white person, Dr. Furnish, just for confirmation?
I was when I got on the radio. Yep, still am.
Okay. Appreciate that.
I am, however, not angry. Go ahead. I will check with our
co-host. We'll check with our co-host, Dr. Timothy Furnish. Justice, if you have some questions for Dr. Furnish, we will go to your line. Let's see here. Justice, your line should be open. Please proceed.
Greetings, Dr. Furnish.
Yes.
Do you believe that racism is white supremacy?
I wouldn't define it so starkly and simply as that. I mean, you know, I have a PhD in Islamic history. I've been to many places around the world, Muslim and non-Muslim. I happen to think that it's possible for lots of different people to be racist, not just white. So, I mean, look, I've been to Iran, believe it or not, and Iranians, who are in many ways very lovely, lovely people, have a very strong prejudice, despite the fact that they're Muslim. Many Iranians have a very strong prejudice against darker-skinned people. And, you know, I've never been to China, but I used to teach world history. I've studied lots of world history. I think it's very clear, if you look at certain aspects of Chinese history, that the Chinese have been racist toward other people. The Japanese, during World War II, were only barely exceeded in their racism by the Nazis in Germany. The Japanese, the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, so-called euphemism for the Japanese Empire in East Asia, basically treated Chinese people, Korean people, and other people of similar skin color, one might add to the Japanese, as inferior races who were to be enslaved. So I think it's, you know, why it in some ways makes sense if you're, you know, African American in the United States to equate racism with white supremacy or white racism. On a global scale, going back thousands of years across the planet, it's clear that there is no one particular race or one particular skin color of people or one particular culture that is any more, you know, amenable to being racist than any other. It just happens to depend who's on top. And in just the last 500 years of history, it's been the case for the most part that Europeans and European American so-called white folks have tended to be on top because of what's happened in history the last 500 years. But this has not always been the case in history. So the answer I guess the short answer would be no, I don't believe that.
What do you mean when you say Islamization?
I'm sorry? I didn't hear the first part of that.
What do you mean when you say Islamization?
Well, Islamization is kind of shorthand. It can mean different things in different contexts, but, I mean, just the word as a verb simply means a culture, a society, generally becoming more Islamic. That's generally what Islamization means. I mean, in that sense, it's analogous to, say, Christianization, Hinduization, Buddhization, which is a bit harder to say, that sort of thing.
Hello, can I be heard? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, must be my mute button. What made you interested in Islamic history?
That's interesting. I joined the Army back in the 1980s to learn Russian because it was the height of the Cold War. I thought it would be useful. And it was after college. I went to law school, couldn't stand law school, so I quit and did something easier like join the Army. But out of the Army's infinite wisdom, which meant pure chance, I wound up getting assigned to learn Arabic in the Army intelligence job for which I enlisted. So I wound up just, again, by luck of the draw, learning Arabic. And then after learning Arabic, I got very interested, since I already had the basic sort of Islamic cultural language under my belt. I got very interested in Islam and Islamic civilization, and eventually did the PhD in the topic.
Why do you focus on Islamic movements in Africa?
You're cut out a bit on me. Why did I focus on Islam in Africa? Was that the question?
Yes.
Oh, well, a couple of reasons. One is I had a very wonderful professor at Ohio State, Ahmed Sikaenga, who was a Sudanese man, wonderful man, who was one of my main professors, who was a very wonderful teacher and got me interested in Islam in Africa. And in particular, I took a class that he taught on jihads, or the history of Islamic Africa, which focused on historical jihads waged by folks like Usman Dan Fodio, for instance, the founder of the Sokoto Caliphate, or the most famous example, probably Muhammad Ahmed, the Sudanese Mahdi of the 1880s. And after this course, I got very interested in Islamic eschatology, the beliefs about the end of time that Muslims hold, which in many ways are very similar to, but in many ways are quite different from those in Christianity. And I basically started studying, and this is what my book, Holiest Wars, that Mr. Lawrence mentioned, my book was the published version of my doctoral dissertation. I was very interested in people that thought they were the Mahdi, who then waged these jihads to conquer territory. And many of them, not all of them, but many of them happened in Islamic Africa. So if you're studying historical occurrences of Mahdiism, the belief in both Sunni and Shia Islam about the coming of the sort of end-of-time eschatological figure, the Mahdi, who, along with Jesus, will make the world Muslim, according to the Muslim hadith, if you're studying those sorts of manifestations of that belief, then really you have to look at Islamic history in Africa, because that's where it's happened a lot. So that's kind of a long explanation, but basically because I was studying Mahdist jihads, and many of them were in Africa, and so then I studied a lot of African history.
Why do you mainly deal with Sufism? Why do you mainly deal with Sufism? I can't pronounce it, man.
Salafism?
Yes.
Salafism? Salafism. Well, I don't know that I mainly deal with that. I've been writing quite a bit on that lately because some folks have asked me to. I often deal with Sufism, which is Islamic mysticism, and Salafism, which is the word in Arabic is from salaf or aslaf. It means the pious ancestors. And in Arabic, particularly Sunni Muslim, among Sunni Muslims that are Arabs, Salafis or Salafism is an attempt to sort of recreate the Islamic community that is believed to have existed around the time of Muhammad. It's sort of like apostolic Christianity in that sense. You know, you have these certain churches in the Christian world that call themselves primitive Baptist churches or apostolic, this, that, or the other church, and they will try to live like folks did in the first century, for instance. You know, in some ways, of course, they usually don't give up their phones and their flush toilets, but in some ways they do. So Salafism is somewhat like that on the Islamic side of the ledger. And Salafism is really sort of a nicer term for what we used to call Islamic fundamentalism, particularly in the Sunni world. That's quite different in 12 or Shi'ism, like in Iran. But in the Sunni world, the Salafis really are basically more or less the Islamic fundamentalists, most of whom want to take the Quran literally and apply it to folks, even maybe if they don't want it applied to them literally. And they are often enemies of the Sufis, the Islamic mystics, particularly in Africa. So I've been doing a lot of writing on that lately because that is sort of one of the main really areas of inter-Muslim struggle in the modern world. I don't know if you saw the news today, but a court in Tunisia, I forget now, was it Tunisia or Libya? I just saw it today. I printed it, I can't find it. It might have been Libya, but it was either Libya or Tunisia, where, you know, they recently had revolutions. Of course, Gaddafi got overthrown in Libya, and, you know, there's sort of a fight going on in both countries between sort of more modernizing folks that want sort of Islamic-type democracy, and then the Salafis in both countries, who want, you know, and they're usually the guys with the big beards who want, you know, harsh Sharia law, you know, chopping off of hands for stealing and things like that. So, again, literal following of some of the Quranic precepts. But a court, and again, in Libya or Tunisia, just sentenced a bunch of Salafis to some years in jail for destroying Sufi shrines. The Salafis, going back to about the year, well, probably back to the 14th or 13th century at least, dislike the Sufis. The Sufis are people that believe you can pray a lot and go into sort of a meditative state and achieve a direct experience of Allah. And they do things that the Salafis don't like they venerate the tombs of their sheikhs. You know, and it's considered rank heresy by the Salafis. And so Salafis go around and attack Sufis, and sometimes Sufis respond in kind. And this has become one of the major sort of cleavages within the Islamic world in terms of Islamic sects, and so that's been why I've been writing on it a lot lately. I think there's a lot of ramifications for what's going on today.
How does studying Islamic history constructive in helping to work against racism, white supremacy?
Well, sort of begging the question. I don't know. You know, I don't know how I would answer that, perhaps in a way that you guys might like. But let me say it this way. I mean, there's sort of this myth in the body politic and in the media that anyone opposed to any aspects of racism, you see it more in Europe than you do here, but you see it a lot in Europe. That if you are opposed to anything or if you're critical of Islam, you're ipso facto a racist, which somehow seems to equate Islam with a race, which is just frankly absurd. Islam is a belief system. I mean, if it were a race, you couldn't join it, right? You're born into a race. But people convert to Islam. People convert out of Islam, for that matter. There are a number of people particularly in Africa, where places like Nigeria, one of the reasons a group like Boko Haram, which is frankly a terrorist group, is blowing up churches, is because they're not happy because people in Africa are converting from Islam to Christianity. This is also happening in Iran, although it's being kept under wraps because the Ayatollahs don't want to admit it. So there's this myth in the media that is fostered by some folks for reasons that I can't quite fathom. It's just ahistorical. Islam is not a race. Christianity is not a race. Hinduism is not a race. I would argue, for that matter, all the people try to argue with you, Judaism is not a race. It's still a belief system. And again, Christianity and Islam are the world's two biggest religions by far. Christianity's over 2 billion people. Islam's about 1.5 billion. And, you know, these aren't races. So I think the thing that I would say to your question, I think sort of maybe a better question to be answered is, how is Islam itself not racist? Because if you look at Islam, there are lots of folks in Islam of various skin hues. I mean, as Malcolm X discovered when he went on the Hajj to Mecca, Islam is not just black African Muslims. Islam is Bosnian Muslims. Again, I've been to Iran. Many of the people in Iran are whiter than I am. Turks. I have many friends that are Turks. I've been to Istanbul twice. Wonderful place. Many people in Turkey are lighter skinned than me and a lot of white Americans. So, Islam is a belief system. It's not a race. It was originally an Arab religion, but, Arabs are, perhaps a bit darker skinned than Europeans, but some of them not a great deal. Go to Lebanon or Syria. Those guys, I was often mistaken for a Syrian or Lebanese chap when I had a full beard. So I would simply say that studying Islam to me has just reinforced that, particularly with the two major world religions, since I myself am Christian, with the two major world religions, Christianity and Islam, that both of these religions have people in them of many different races, and you can't equate either religion with simply one race.
You didn't answer my question. You're kind of going all over the place, but
well, that's because I won't accept the premise of your question that white supremacy is an issue. I've already said that I really don't accept the premise of that question.
I didn't interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. I would like to send courtesy. How should your work help to replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible?
I'm sorry, the middle part of that cut out on me. How should my work help what? I'm sorry?
How should your work help you to replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible?
How should it help me? How should it help me to do it? Or how should it help, like, a generic person in general?
You.
Me? Well, see, but I don't think I need to replace white supremacy because I don't believe in the issue that you just brought up of white supremacy, so I can't really answer that question.
What is your ultimate objective?
With what? With my life, with my research, with, what I'm doing tonight, with the NBA Finals, with what?
What is your main goal in life?
Well, I don't know that I really want to share my main goal in life on this radio station in front of the public. I will constrain it to my research. My research is to historically and theologically accurately study certain topics in Islamic history and make that information available to as many people as possible. I think I've done that with Islamic eschatology and Baptism. I'm one of really only two American scholars, frankly, that deals with this topic. The other one being a friend of mine at Rice University, David Cook. Islamic apocalyptic, Islamic eschatology, Islamic messianic beliefs are generally, they become very well known on a very shallow, facile level to a lot of people, particularly in the period since 9/11, and particularly after Ahmadinejad became president of Iran. But a lot of people know very little about the topic and opine as if they know more. So my main topic is simply to do solid research into the areas of Islamic history that I feel competent to deal with and to make that available to the public.
So you do this in order to do what?
Well, I just, like I said, try to share my research with people because I think there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and just flat-out historically wrong information that's being put out, particularly about things like, again, Islamic eschatology.
how does that help you in life? Or how will it help you in life?
I don't know. It's probably like any job that anybody does. How does it help the guy at work? How does it help the guy at the Honda car land that fixes the pilots and does a good job? How does it help, a teacher when they do a good job teaching? This is what I do in life. This is the path I've wound up on, and I think that it behooves me to do the best job I can and be as truthful and accurate as I can, and that's what I do. I should add, since you asked the question, if you don't mind me, although you did accuse me of sort of wandering around earlier, which I really don't think I was, I will add that a lot of the positions that I take having to deal with Islam in general and some of the other specific topics like jihad are positions that are not axiomatically right-wing. I've been criticized by a lot of people. I know it's on the long intro that Mr. Lawrence played. There's some stuff about Pam Geller. Pam Geller does not like me because I'm one of the so-called conservative scholars who actually will say that there's such a thing as moderate Islam. And she does not believe that. A lot of people on the right don't believe that, and I think that's just silly. It's clear that there's sects of Islam that are moderate. It is also so I get in a lot of trouble with a lot of my colleagues on sort of the conservative side of the spectrum on this issue. On the other hand, a lot of people on the left don't like my research at all because since I've read the Quran in Arabic and I've read a lot of the hadiths, the traditions going back to Muhammad in Arabic, which most people on the left cannot do, I can clearly show that jihad is not an extremist interpretation of Islam. Jihad is a mainstream interpretation of Islam. So basically, as I said earlier, I try to do my research, put stuff out for people. They can read my article, they can read my book. I've been on other radio shows, I've been on TV a few times. I just try to do my research, and I don't really care if the right or the left gets mad at me. I don't care if Muslims get mad at me for that matter, because I'm doing research in primary languages, and I'm presenting what I think is fact. People can argue with me if they want, but, I've often been called Islamophobe myself, which I think is pretty interesting. I wouldn't have spent 20 years doing what I do if I hated Islam and Muslims, which I certainly don't. So again, my purpose in life, with this part of my life, is to try to report accurately, truthfully, historically, particularly historically accurately on Islam.
How do you determine who is white and who is not white?
I really don't worry about things like that in my life. Because, the way I look at it, there's one human race. It's all Homo sapiens. We can all intermarry and have children. So I just think the whole idea of race, frankly, is biologically silly. So I don't go through my life worrying about things like that. I see people as human beings. I believe there was a man that, I like the quote that said, we should recognize people by, content of their character, not the color of their skin. So I don't worry about the color of skin.
That will be all for now. Gus, go ahead.
Wow, the context of white supremacy, that is a hoot right there. I will point out from your tweet, this is from June 6th, and I do not follow I do not follow Dr. Furnish on Twitter. You do not have to follow individuals to access their content online. At any rate, his June 6th tweet, he said, this is where it doesn't have the time next to it, but he says, and just so you know, both Chuck Oliver and Matt Chernoff, co-hosts of the show, are white. So it looks like from time to time, and you said that you are white, Dr. Furnish, it looks like from time to time Dr. Furnish does make a distinction between who is a white person, who is a non-white person. He had done so prior to being on this program. I suspect that these are not the only two times when he has made a point of picking out whether or not he was talking to a white person or not. So it looks like he does know how to make that distinction.
Mr. Lawrence, wait a minute. You're turning that around. I didn't bring up the race issue at all. Again, there was a guy on the radio who was a host of a show that said I was an angry white man because I wasn't rooting for LeBron. I didn't bring race into it. He did. I simply responded to that.
But you pointed out that the person, whomever, made this accusation, or at least that the hosts, are white. You felt that it was important to make note of that, correct?
Yes, because I assumed, perhaps wrongly, that you assumed that the host was black.
I didn't, as I've said repeatedly, I didn't hear this. I don't have anything to make an assumption.
I know.
Hang on, I'm talking. Stop interrupting, please. I haven't heard anything about the radio program, so I can't make an assumption, a guess, a gander, nothing. All I can do is listen to what you say about it. So I had no idea whether the hosts were white, not white. You volunteered that information because you thought it was important for whatever reason. And I contend on this planet that I say is dominated by racism, white supremacy, everyone is going to be making observances and paying attention to racial classifications because they are very important, and the most powerful white people say so. That's all. But you did make a note to point out that you
I'll tell you,
white.
Yes, I do wish I was powerful, but unfortunately I'm not. But I wish I could get some of that power, but I
wanted to ask a question. Dr. Furnish, has an individual, to your knowledge, has individual who is classified as Muslim, who identifies as Muslim, have they ever mistreated you because you were not Muslim?
Have they ever mistreated me personally?
Because you are not Muslim?
Yeah, unless you count a couple of little events when I visited Iran, probably not.
You say, have in your travels around the world, your time in the Army, have you spent a significant amount of time around individuals who do identify as Muslim?
Well, yes.
A lot of time? It's been environments where you've been around more than 50 individuals who identify as Muslim?
Let's see. I've been to Iran, I've been to Turkey twice, I've been to Egypt, I've been to Israel, both the occupied territories and the non-occupied territories. I've been to several mosques in the United States. I've been a guest speaker at the invited guest speaker at the Islamic Center of England in London, and I've been to a jihad conference in Scotland, which was almost entirely Muslim. So yes, I've been around a lot of Muslims.
Okay. And have you, in all this time, your travels, have you ever felt safe, like, there was a threat to your livelihood because you are a white person and or because you are not Muslim?
Well, yes, especially, again, when I was in Iran, but again, how do I tell when I'm in Iran if I'm being discriminated against because I'm American or because of my skin color? I don't have any way of knowing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it may have simply been because I was American.
What was can you give us like the details?
I don't know, sure.
Can you give us the details, like what happened to you?
Oh, well, I went to Iran in 2008 for a conference. I was actually invited, and most of the clerics that I dealt with were quite friendly folks and helpful. But the security services in Iran were not. And I was one of, for instance, several people who were picked out specifically to be fingerprinted and have their passport taken away. I don't know if you travel overseas much, but when someone takes your passport away, you get real nervous. I had copies of it stashed in various parts of my luggage and pockets, but that's not the same as having your passport. So again, there's a bit of intimidation there, although I was supposedly an official guest of the Iranian state. But again, I don't know. That may have very well just been because, and probably was, although I don't know for sure, because I was American, and possibly because I was Christian, not because they knew I was Christian before I came, and not again because of skin color. Because as I mentioned earlier, there are people in Iran that are probably whiter than I am, although there are some that aren't. So.
Okay. We had someone that dialed in with a question, and Dr. Furnish is only hanging out with us for an hour. I do have some folks that dialed in with questions, so I want to make sure that they get an opportunity. There had been, when I started looking at your material and realizing that we've been spending a lot of time talking about some of these same issues with what happened with the Woolwich incident in London and the Boston bombing incident, it was like, oh, wow, we we could have totally ignored the finals and all that jazz and just moved right to the main issues we've been talking about for about a month or so. Like, I would really be curious to hear more of your thoughts on what happened in with the Woolwich situation as well as the Boston bombing, because we've been talking about that a lot. I think listeners would appreciate that as well. Okay. With the time that we have, I guess I'll get the listener's question first, make sure I don't miss them. The person that called in 8423, do you have a question for Dr. Furnish?
Hi, yes. Good evening, Gus. Good evening, Dr. Furnish. I had a couple of questions. I want to get them in quickly. Dr. Furnish, let me ask you, are you an Arab?
No.
Not
I'm originally from Kentucky, so.
So you're not an Arab?
No, sir. And I'm a Christian.
Okay. Can an Arab be a Christian?
I'm sorry, the first part of that cut out. I'm sorry?
Can an Arab be a Christian?
Oh, certainly. Yes, there are many Arab Christians. 10% of the population of Egypt are Coptic Christians. 10% of the Palestinians are Christians.
Okay. Do you consider Arabs a race or a culture?
Well, see, again, I don't like to talk in terms of racial groups because I think there's one race. It's called the human race. I will concede that there are different ethno-linguistic groups, and that's what I prefer to talk about, again, as a former professor of world history. There are different ethno-linguistic and particularly linguistic groups. Who is an Arab? The Arabs define an Arab like the ancient Greeks did the Greeks, and like the Chinese, the Han Chinese do the Han Chinese, is someone that speaks their language. So anyone that speaks Arabic is an Arab, whether Christian or Muslim. Now, because of the sort of accident of history or divine providence, depending on your viewpoint, with the fact that the man that founded Islam, Muhammad, was an Arab, Islam has come to be primarily identified with Arabs. But the vast majority of Muslims in the world today are not Arabs.
So
the most populous Muslim country is Indonesia.
By your definition, then, anyone who speaks Arab is an Arab.
Well, again, I think that's sort of a working definition. I mean, you could probably quibble with it, and there are other people that could probably add or subtract from that. Well, you probably couldn't subtract much, but you could add to it. But I think the primary identification for a cultural group of people is what language do they speak. I think that's sort of where you start.
Is that your definition? Well, I'm looking for your definition.
That's kind of the working definition I tend to work with, yes.
Okay, so would a Saudi Arabian consider a Muslim from Senegal, would they consider them an Arab if they speak Arabic?
Well, no, but then a Saudi probably has a different definition than I do. Middle Eastern culture, particularly Arab culture, is very sort of tribally defined, particularly in the Gulf and places like Saudi Arabia. So, they would, and again, I mentioned this earlier in sort of my refutation of this idea that was sort of being implied that only white folks can be racist, which, the Spike Lee definition, which I simply don't accept. Again, I've been around Arabs and Muslims for a long time, and there definitely is a sort of a pecking order in their viewpoint toward other Muslims. But it's not always necessarily racial. A lot of it is, again, stems from this idea that because Muhammad was an Arab, which historically, as far as we know, is true, Muhammad was an Arab, the Arabs occupy sort of a primary place, particularly within Sunni Islam, right? And then other people that have become Muslim, whether they're Uyghur Chinese or they're Indonesians or they're Pakistanis or they're Senegalese or Nigerians, that they are lesser Muslims, and not so much because they're different skin color, although you will run into that with Arabs in particular sometimes, and sometimes with Turks and Iranians, but mainly because from an Arab point of view, they are the first Muslim people, and these other people are sort of Johnny-come-lately, so it's kind of that idea.
So what do you mean when you say Muhammad was an Arab? What do you mean by that when you say that?
He was a tribal, cultural Arab who spoke Arabic.
So you say
as far as we know. We don't historically know much. I'm sorry?
So you're saying the term Arabic is more cultural than racial?
Well, again, I think it's primarily a linguistic term. There are cultural elements to it, but I just have a hard time with this whole idea of races. You could take You could take somebody from China or somebody from America and move them to Saudi Arabia and have them live their whole life there, and they would grow up, and you would not really be able to tell any difference.
You wouldn't be able to tell the difference?
Oh, you could tell the difference by looking at them, but they wouldn't speak any differently, and I almost guarantee you, they wouldn't believe any differently.
So to believe something makes you Arab, or to speak Arabic makes you...
No, it would make you Muslim, but I'm not conflating the two things. They would culturally be an Arabic. They would...
So...
Yes, wait a minute, hang on.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You cut out on me there. I'm sorry, I didn't hear all that. Go ahead.
So you speak Arabic, so that makes you an Arab, correct?
Well, I think this goes for any group. Again, I think the primary cultural identifier is what language does someone speak as their native language. You know, whether you're Irish or, again, Han Chinese or Malay or Siberian or Arab, whatever. I think the primary identifier, first and foremost, is what language you speak. I don't really quite. Let me ask you a question. What is the point you're trying to get at? Because I'm not grasping it. Why don't you just tell me?
Well, I want to ask one last question before we move on. The incident that happened
go ahead, but I still.
Recently,
All right, go ahead.
Do you think the U.S. and do you think the U.S. and British intelligence works with these terrorists to create situations to justify occupying other people's lands?
No, I don't. I think that's one of those wacky conspiracy theories that I tend to hear from my friends that like Ron Paul. No, I don't think so.
Had you ever worked for the intelligence community at all, at any time?
Well, I used to be in Army intelligence, so what does that tell you?
Oh, okay. So that's the answer.
And listen, it's like I tell my Muslim friends that are always telling me about how there's all these like super secret, like nifty James Bond things that CIA does. I'm like, guys, I've been to the CIA. There's some good, hard-working folks there, but they ain't James Bond, and they're not Supermen. And to think that the United States could go around the world and engage in all of these conspiracy theories in order to justify its policies assumes a level of competence that, frankly, I can tell you our government does not have.
Did that answer your question, caller? Caller? I don't know. Are you still there, sir? I'm not hearing you. Oh, it looks like he might have. Looks like we might have lost. I'm not sure if he hung up or got disconnected. I hope that answered your question, sir. Thank you for calling in. I guess before you were in the 101st Airborne in the Army. Is that correct?
I was. Yes, sir. Back in the 80s.
That's the same division, unless I'm mistaken, that was sent to Little Rock, Arkansas. During
I don't know. That would have been before my time because they sent us in 1980s. We didn't go anywhere like that. We just went to Egypt and such.
For sure, but the 1957 so-called integration crisis, they sent in the 101st Airborne.
I think that's right. I think you're right.
That is pretty wacky. I guess also, man, maybe we can have you back one time down the road and see if we can catch up on.
Oh, we could probably do that, Mr. Lawrence.
I guess if I had to pick one of these, I'm looking at the Woolwich thing, and do you think the suspects, the Tsarnaev brothers in the Boston bombing, do you think that they are white or non-white?
The Tsarnaevs?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting, isn't it? A lot of people talked about that. Well, their skin color is surely white. Yeah, I mean, the very term Caucasian, which still shows up on certain government forms and certain, job application forms, is a 19th century legacy of this idea, social Darwinist idea that all the quote unquote white folks in the world came from the Caucasus region of southern Russia.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I mean this one. I feel like when you tweeted, right, you had 140 characters. You let me know immediately when you felt it was important. Hey, these hosts, they are white. You felt it was important. I would like the same sort of response right here. If you were trying to let me know, hey, this is my opinion. I'm not saying everybody agrees with me, but my opinion, according to Dr. Timothy R. Furnish, my view on the Boston suspects, white or not white, you would say?
Well, their skin color is white, sure.
No, I'm not talking about their skin color. I'm talking about the same way you identified the racial classification for the Atlanta radio talk show hosts. If you were going to mark down a form.
No, it's not the same way, because there are different cultures of white people. If you want to just go by skin color,
man.
I mean, fins.
Who said skin color?
Fins aren't the same as Americans.
You're doing it again, Dr. Furnish. I didn't mention skin color. I want to be very clear about that. I have not.
You did. You said the word white.
I did not say skin. Exactly. I did not say skin color. I said identify their racial classification the same way that you did the talk radio show hosts in Atlanta. You didn't tell me because, or I assume, I could be wrong here. You know, you make errors doing this, but I assume since you want talk radio, you weren't looking at these hosts. I assume you didn't have them in front of you.
No, I've seen their pictures. Okay. I know who these guys are.
At any rate, you did not mention their skin color at all. You just let me know. I've concluded that I think these are white people, the radio hosts. I'm sure you could do the same thing.
They're white American dudes, yes. But you cannot say two Sarnaya brothers whose family is from Dagestan in Central Asia is the same white as two guys from, Georgia.
I'm not saying that they are or they aren't. All I'm asking, if you had to identify, are they white or not? And you could say yes, no, give your explanation, that's fine.
If I was just looking at these dudes and didn't know anything else about them, I'd say they're white. They're white Muslims, but they're white.
Knowing what you know about them, since this is not the case, you're still not really answering the question. The suspects in the Boston case who you have written about, are these individuals that you identify as white, yes or no?
They're white Muslims, yes. I'd say they're white Muslims. Ms. Lutz, I don't know what you're getting at. I mean, you want me to admit to something, and obviously you're frustrated that I'm not. Tell me what it is you want me to admit to.
I'm just asking a simple question, and this is one of the. Hang on. You're interrupting. I hope for listeners, I hope that this will stand out. I understand that sometimes people listen, they come to their own conclusions and think Gus, you're talking crazy. I hope for listeners that this really stands out. The responses that he's giving to this question.
What are you saying? Are you saying my response is dishonest or something? I don't understand.
Hang on, you're interrupting again. And this will give me...
Yes, and you're monologuing, Mr. Lawrence. You go on for quite a long time and don't let me respond to accusations that I think are unfair, sir.
There's the word. I have allowed you to respond. I think you've been given a reasonable opportunity to speak, and you have not been interrupted. I think you've been interrupting pretty regularly this evening. There is
That's
one
because you're accusing me then, sir. You're basically accusing... Mr. Lawrence, I'm going to have to go, okay? Because I can't take this anymore.
That's fine.
And you can go on with your guess about what a racist white guy I am if you like that, sir. But I'm going to go away.
I am going to read the report on persecution complex because I had that at the beginning of the program. Persecution complex is the defining modern psychosis. I had that at the very beginning because I thought this guy, everybody is out to get him. I even wrote it down where he said his colleagues even don't agree with me. They don't agree with me because I think that they're moderate. Everybody is out to get me. Everybody is out to get me and accuse me of being a racist. But this article, it says, over the course of the 20th century, fantasies of persecution became the defining modern delusion, suggest a pair of studies on long-term trends in psychosis. The first published March 18th, 2011, in the International Journal of Social Psychiatry was based on 102 patient records from the psychiatric hospital in western Pennsylvania. Randomly picked and representing each decade of the 20th century, the records were interpreted as glimpses of each era's mental atmosphere. From these glimpses, a fuller picture emerged. After the 1950s, delusions involving persecutions, variations on the "someone is out to get me" theme were 4 times more frequent. Feelings of being spied upon increased by 5. Now the report goes on. I'm going to stop there. Just in my view, contextually speaking, that is huge. Post-World War II, rise of the so-called civil rights movement and global, what they call anti-colonial movements throughout the continent of Africa, India, all over the world, Vietnam conflict, non-white people everywhere resisting racism, white supremacy, that in that era, you have a fourfold spike in beliefs, persecution complex, beliefs that you're being attacked and accused of things that is incredible. And they have, again, a white man pictured at the top of this article. Persecution complex is the defining modern psychosis. With a white man, he's got a helmet on, glasses, and he's pointing at a pamphlet that says the truth. I think he's a white man. I could be wrong. Looks like someone who would be accepted as white. Fits to it. I think it fits also very nicely with Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. I think you're going to see a lot more of this, which you heard with Dr. Timothy Furnish, racist suspect. You're going to hear a lot more of this, particularly as racist white supremacists amplified the signal and saying that birth rates are dropping when you have Jeb Bush, son of former president and grandson of different former president, coming out and saying that we need immigrants because their fertility rates are so high. Bill Clinton last week, former president, coming out and saying we need immigration because he didn't say the word fertility, but he said the immigrants, they're reproducing. He said European Americans, we're not reproducing at a fast enough rate. We need this influx of immigrant population to continue to be strong. Bill Clinton said this last week. They had several reports talking about low rates of white children. Big color report on the front page of the USA. I think you're going to see more and more white people sounding like this. They're being attacked, whether they're talking about Muslims attacking us, immigrants attacking us, black people attacking us. It's going to be more and more of individuals sounding like Dr. Furnish. Accusing me of being a racist. You're accusing me of being dishonest and that sort of thing, when no one has said that. Just asking for a question. Do you think this is a white person? And he tried to be, I think they're white Muslims. They'll add a word. I think we talked about that, or at least I've said something about that before. You can be talking to a white person and they might give you 100 words. 95 of them could be accurate. It'll be 5 that'll be inaccurate, false, that will throw everything off. Just something as small as that. Yes, I think they're white Muslims. Didn't say white Muslims. Let's try again. And I'm glad I did not get frustrated today, because Dr. Furnish is one of those white people. Like, I feel the people that say, they have a hard time talking to white people, particularly white people like this. I think one of our callers said before, what do you do when you talk to a white person when you really feel like this white person is dedicated to not being truthful? You're talking to someone who is dishonest. You think they're dishonest. You think that they're not trying to answer your questions. What do? How do you codify that to deal with it? I think one of the things that I try to do, and it can be challenging, make sure that you don't get frustrated. If you're talking to someone and you already know that this person has a tendency to not answer questions, this person has a tendency to be dishonest, I'm going to have to move this back up to the top. Justice say this is consecutive days now. We have had a white person who earned a buckets and buckets of words sound clip. Do as much as you can to not get frustrated. And I was really pleased at the end, because I feel like sometimes that's what they want. I've said that. They try to do that sort of thing to get you frustrated, so they're going to say, oh, see, it's just a wild, crazy nigger over there, wild, crazy Muslim, or whatever. They'll use another code word just to say that you're irrational, emotional, acting out, as we've talked about. We've been talking about it for about the past couple of weeks now, that inertia, the inertia of anti-blackness. If you're a non-white person and you are talking about racism, white supremacy, you have minimized your rad, you're not avoiding racism, you're dealing with it head on. The inertia of that, how we've been groomed, is to pick out individuals like that as being crazy, threats, terrorists. These are niggers that need to be beaten, something done with them. And white people can use that to your advantage. So I try to neutralize that by not getting angry, and I feel like today that was pretty reasonable job of not getting frustrated when he was, in my view, not answering questions. I suspect deliberately practicing racism, white supremacy. I think I'll get a quick commercial break, and then we'll get folks if they have feedback from Dr. Furnish. One thing I would say, or I guess 2 final points I would make in terms of code, this is something I would pay attention to. I'm not a Muslim. I don't even feel like, I feel very ignorant even bringing up the subject matter, the whole history of Islam and talking about all that. I'm super ignorant about all of that and pretty much everything else on the planet. However, one thing that I have noted, we talk about codes, skill with words. This is a white man who says he was in Army intelligence. He went into the Army studying language to learn Russian. We're in the Cold War. I want to be of use. I'm going to learn Russian. That's what he said. Ended up learning Arabic. Bragged about his expertise in language. Hey, I have high regard for that. That's very integral. In fact, I've maintained that's one of the ways white people maintain domination over us, having acute skill, expertise, dexterity with words. Now, one of the things that I think is going to be playing out, and you can see this with some of the recent incidents that happened around the Tsarnaev brothers in Boston, the Woolwich incident, the hacking in London, both times where the suspects were reported to be Muslims. The questions about their racial classification in the Woolwich, it's even clearer because you got just individuals who are black there. So, that's make it plain what they're doing there. But I think you're going to see more and more where white people are given an opportunity to say things, to talk about racism, white supremacy, but they're going to do it under the code of speaking against Islam or Muslims. You heard in the sound clip, I played it from this past week, we're in Tennessee, where they were having a meeting to talk about quote-unquote anti-Islam statements, where someone had made some sort of image with a saying, how you wink at a Muslim, and it was a person looking through the crosshairs of a gun. They were making images like that, and so they were having a meeting where they were saying that this sort of thing is a hate crime. You can get arrested for things like this. And you heard the people, they were cheering and what have you. Someone went up and said that a mosque was burned down and it was a room, I suspect a room of white people, racists, and they cheered. And hey, as I said, I'm not a Muslim, but this is coming up this September. You've heard all the hubbub about the 50-year anniversary of the March on Washington. This is also the 50-year anniversary of the bombing of the Birmingham church, which was just a few short weeks after the March on Washington that killed those 4 little girls. Spike Lee, he said Spike Lee's definition of racism, that only whites can be racist. Spike Lee's documentary film on the bombing of that church that killed those 4 little girls. 50-year anniversary. That should have a special resonance. A room full of white people celebrating the burning of a mosque, a place of worship. That should have resonance for black people worldwide, especially black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere, given our history with white people. I would encourage paying attention to that. I think you, in my view, you're going to have an easier time, particularly the more of these sort of incidents that they have. Boston. You heard 9/11 referenced with that a lot. The incident in London, the Woolwich incident. You're going to have more and more of this where I think it's going to be more and more tolerable to come out and make statements like that in opposition to Islam, radical Islam, fundamental Islam. These will be some of the code words that they're using, and they're just talking about non-white people. In fact, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she talked about this extensively on the program the summer of Anders Breivik, because he was saying the same thing in Norway. Islamization. He was using the same term, Islamization. It's, in my view, I think it's going to be more and more acceptable for white people to direct all of their fury and animosity at non-white people, particularly black people, under the guise and verbiage of speaking against Islam. I think it's going to become very acceptable for white people to do that, and you're going to see more and more. You heard Bill Maher, and he's supposed to be one of the good whites. You heard him doing it in the sound clip. I suspect it's going to be more of that. I could be wrong. But even the fact that you've got Bill Maher and more of these sort of incidents, you even had folks on the BBC after the Woolwich incident, more and more of this, the threat of Islam, non-white people. Just a theory. Keep that in mind. And the Obama connection, because I was going to ask him about that. Haven't they been saying that President Obama is a Muslim the whole time? Hasn't that been one of their chief gripes? He's a Muslim. He's not one of us. He's a Muslim. I think they've been doing that for years. I remember when we were doing a report before he was even elected the first time around that was such a problem that they were frightened to even have a Muslim on stage with him for fear that white people were going to freak out. Not all, but a significant number of white people. I remember that. That's been reported from all the way throughout. He's Kenyan and he's Muslim. Just one to think about. I will share, I had one other comment because one of our listeners was writing about Dr. Furnish as well. We'll hit the phone lines and do all that once we take our commercial break. Context of white supremacy. We will be right back.
RacismDaily.com, your number one source for global news reports on race, racism, and overt actions of white supremacy. From Asia to the Americas, to Europe, to Australia, to Africa, racism is not a thing of the past. It is our current reality. Be informed. Be globally informed. You should be the first to know. RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Do you need a one-stop shop for all of your multimedia needs? Triumphant Multimedia is a skilled team of professionals with a passion for great marketing and chic design. Our specialties include consulting, brand development, copywriting, and creative graphic design that's second to none. We also offer photography, photo retouching, videography, and video editing. At Triumphant Multimedia, our goal is to provide highly effective creative solutions built to suit any individual need or budget. Give us a call at 678-732-8067 or check us out online at TRIMultimedia.com.
Hi everyone, welcome. This is Justice with the C.O.W.S radio program. If you want to learn about, understand, and counter racism, white supremacy, be sure not to miss a C.O.W.S episode. We keep them jammed, packed with constructive information to sharpen your use of words to help eliminate the system of racism, white supremacy, ASAP. Also, to be able to invest in my counter-racist efforts, co-hosting the C.O.W.S radio program, please visit my blog, justdojustice.blogspot.com.
You're just saying just buckets and buckets of words.
I got an uncle real crazy. My Uncle B, 55 years old, hates white people, married to a white lady. And he's sitting around going, you know, these crackers ain't shit, except for Susan. And he tried to explain the whole thing to me one day, say, yeah, I got a white wife, I love her, she loved me, that's all that matters. But I tell you this, if the revolution ever comes, I'll kill her first, just to show these crackers I'm being finished. Motherfucking cracker ass, motherfucking cracker, shit cracker motherfucker. Hey, hi, honey. Motherfucking cracker, I'll kill my cracker kids too.
I was curious as to when you began thinking about racism as a religion, as the strongest religion in the universe? When did you start thinking about racism as a religion?
When I made the 9 areas of activity, when I listed those, and the 7th area was religion, and then naturally I had to get into defining what religion is. Strong belief backed up by action, and just by that process stumbled into it. Because then I had to ask myself, okay, well, what is the strongest religion? What's the most prominent religion on the planet, if you go by that definition? Strong belief backed up by action that may or may not have a God at its head, in which case the religion of the white supremacists is white supremacy, and the God of that religion are the white supremacists themselves, according to the evidence. So that's how I came into it. It just evolved just by me seeking to follow the logic. Compensatory logic. I mean, that's how you raise the question. See, it starts with a question. Everything starts with a question. What is a religion? It's a word called religion. Now, what does that word mean? So you start with whomever invented the word to start with. You start looking in dictionaries. I only have one dictionary. I don't have a lot of dictionaries. I have one very old dictionary, really. And that somebody gave me something, I didn't buy it. And that's the only one I've used. And it goes back about I think it's about 1970. The dictionary that I have, American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language. So I just started with that. It's an old battered dictionary that I have. And looked it up, and I don't even remember what that was, but I figured, well, I better come up with a compensatory definition that's more explicit. So given it that definition, then the next thing I raises the question of, okay, there are many, many religions throughout the planet. Now, of all the religions, what is the strongest one? And that's what I came up with. So I decided to put it in capital letters, the religion of white supremacy. In fact, I only mentioned the white supremacy as being the system of white supremacy, the religion of white supremacy, I think just one time in the entire basic code book. Now, I think I mentioned it a number of times in the word guide, but that's how that evolved.
I had never thought of racism as a religion until I, read your book and heard you speak about it. And once I heard the explanation, it made total sense. And once I had that understanding, I began to see over and over again just how white supremacy does function like a religion. Just hearing white people talk, particularly when I hear white people get challenged on racism, it really sounds like a religion, something that, they have to practice very important, strong set of beliefs supported by action. It just...
And there's a statement, with several elements, I think. Now the question is raised, how did that evolve in my mind? And also there was a white man, I think he was from Alabama, back in the 1960s, and he said, people just ought to stop, having all these arguments and falling out about this thing about race. He said, it ain't nothing really complicated about it. People are just stop getting all emotional about it and just be sensible. And then he followed that up with a statement that I think it kind of influenced me going in the direction of that religion thing. He said, it works like this. Say, God made the white man to serve God. And then he made the nigger to serve the white man. Now, if everybody just leave that alone, everything will work out fine. That's God's will. God made the white man to serve God. And then he made the nigger to serve the white man. Now, what's the problem? And so I thought about that, and then I said, yeah, but there's a flaw there. Because if God made the white man to serve God, and then made niggers, meaning me, to serve the white man, why do white people in general have to be so deceptive in what they do? Why do they have to do things that are not necessary to do? See, and so a question is raised, and harmful things. Why do they have to do all of that if they're serving God? I mean, what kind of God would set up something like that? See, it's not logical when at the same time they say God is good. Well, why would God assign people to act the way that white people act? See what I mean? And then have them boss black people. And have, black people doing some of the things that are very, very, that they themselves, the white people say, are very ungodly, according to them, whomever God is. So it didn't make sense. So it sounded like, hey, that's just a statement to cover what people want to do anyway on their own, and saying that God set it up. Now it could be, but it does bring things into doubt. And so I chose to go the doubt route based on the racists will lie. See, if you got an assignment by God, you don't have to lie about nothing. You just tell people straight up, hey, I'm just carrying out God's will. I ain't going to lie to you about nothing. But the white supremacists lie. They say things that are not true all the time. Very deceptive. So that gave me reason to believe, no, they have invented a religion. And they don't call it that in general conversation, but that's what it is. See, because the white supremacists, they practice all the parts of their religion. Because all the parts makes them supreme when they sum them all up. So that's easy to measure. They're the only people I know who practice every part of their religion. That makes it the strongest. And by it being the one that overrules all other religions and their rules. People run around and say, well, I follow Jesus, And, well, did Jesus tell you to move out of your church next week? Because they're going to put a parking lot there? Did you want to move? Oh, no, the people down there in the State House, they came up and said, they voted on it, and they decided, hey, they got to put a parking lot where my church is. Now, they're going to help me to set up somewhere else. Well, is that what you wanted? No, because it's moving me away from my congregation. And I argued with them about that. Say, well, you said you obey Jesus. Now, what did Jesus say about you moving? Well, I prayed on it. And what was the answer? Well, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and render unto God the things that are God's. Oh, okay. So now, who told you to move your church? Caesar. So I'll render that to him, because these are things that have to do with this world and all like that. So I obey the law. Or you obey the law of Caesar. Yeah. And so Jesus said that that's all right. Yeah. Okay, so do you know of any time that Caesar ever told anybody to do anything? Members of your congregation and whatnot, and you recommended that they didn't do it because Jesus was against it? That's a very important question, and the answer to that will come to whoever you're asking. Have you ever displeased? Have you ever gone against the teachings of Jesus? when Caesar, whoever you call Caesar, told you that in some particular instance to follow his or her dictation and not the dictation of whatever it is that you've been telling people that they better follow Jesus on that one? Very important question. But built into Christianity is that escape clause. That's what I call it. Because you can always say, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. And you can always say, this whole world belongs to Caesar. But who cares? Because the world is evil anyway. You just do what God tells you to do. And you find out what God told you to do by talking with Jesus. And you talk to Jesus through prayer. So they're well covered on that. But the white supremacists, who are the Caesars of this world where non-white people are concerned, simply say, yeah, I talk to Jesus too. In fact, I am Jesus. So I talk to myself, and what myself told me to tell you is get that church off that corner by July the 1st, or you're going to be contending with my bulldozers. And I will put your preacher self in one of my cells if you're out there trying to demonstrate saying you ain't going to move. And you say you want to be like Jesus. That's what I heard you say on the radio in one of your sermons. Well, you know what happened to him. Yeah, that's the voice of the white supremacists.
Like I said, doing my research for this white person, he wrote this book on the Civil War, and going back and studying the Civil War especially, I mean, it seems so clear that white people, they see white supremacy.
Context of white supremacy. You can get Mr. Fuller's material, producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. Word guide, code book, both. Get more than one copy. That way you can share with other victims. I will check. We had Shadow, I believe, is on the line. If you have thoughts you were like, oh, before I hit, I will do what I said I was going to do. Now, it has become way easy to dial in. We had a listener contacted me today and wanted to know about being able to call into the program. Brand new, might have been up for a while and I just didn't know about it, but white people have a feature where you can call in. The easy way to do this is to go to the free conference call hd.com page. I'll put the link on my Facebook page, but it's free conference call hd.com. Now, when you go to that page, there is a blue button on the left side. It's under a female racist suspect female. Blue button that says HD conferencing. Click that blue button. Once you click that blue button, there will be a blue button. This time it says dial in via our flash phone. Dial in via our flash phone. The reason I'm taking time and doing this is because I think this might permanently solve all problems. Anybody who would like to dial into the program, I think this will work anywhere in the world. Anybody, you want to dial in and talk on the program, this should do it. And you can use this to listen. So and I think there's an app with this as well. So you should be good like all the way around. I'm looking right at it. There's an app. So if you have an iPhone or a mobile device, you can do the exact same thing. you would just go to the free conferencecallhd.com. You go to that page, and there's an app right there. So you can use your iPhone and access. You can use your phone. You can use your computer. Should be very easy anywhere in the world. I know we have folks who are listening who are outside the States. Any part of the planet that you are on, go to the free conferencecallhd.com page. Click the button. It's on the left side of the page, blue button. It says HD conferencing. You click that button, the next page. I'm just doing this for the people that want to call. If you want to do the iPhone app, all you have to do is download that, and it's pretty much the same. But if you need the iPhone app, that's separate. Folks who want to dial in, you click the button where it says dial in via our flash phone. Click that button. Little pop-up window, flash phone is what it says. There will be, the first line will say list of numbers. You want the 760-569-76, same number we've been giving out for years. 760-569-7676. So you pick that number. Then it says access code, the same access code that we've been giving out for years, 564943. So the first line, you pick the number, 760-569-7676, and the access code is 564943. That's all you have to do. If you want to put your name in, you can. If you want to make up a name, you can. If you don't want to put anything in, that's fine too. All you have to do is pick the number, put in the access code, and click the green button that says place call. It will prompt you. It will ask for access to your microphone. Now, this is the system of white supremacy, so they might, be monitoring you. You've heard everything they've been talking about the last month, so that might be. But they will ask your permission to access your microphone. You have to allow that, and once it happens, it'll connect you. I don't think you have to do anything else. You'll just be connected. There's a dial pad that will be on the screen. Same procedure. If you want to put your hand up to participate, you press *6. I think it will give you a prompt and say, do you want to speak? Press 1 if you would like to talk. You press 1 and your hand will go up, and then I'll see it and can open up your line. But this should permanently solve the problem. If you would like to participate anytime, if you would like to listen, if you would like to speak, this should permanently solve the problem. And this is supposed to work even better than Skype. I know some people, including Justice and myself, who have had problems where sometimes Skype is difficult and you have to dial in 2 or 3 times or 8 or 10 times. This should work every time without fail, so they say. Or at least be a lot more efficient than Skype, so they tell me. But you can use this anywhere in the world. If you have a computer, if you would prefer to do it on your phone, you just have to download the app, or your mobile device, you have a tablet or whatever. You just have to download the app, which is on that same page. Instead of clicking the flash phone button, you would pick the iPhone app download now button. Very simple. Should be easy. I know we have folks in South Africa, Japan, Europe, all over, Canada listening. If you have interest in participating, should not be an excuse anymore. There should be, and it's free. You don't have to pay anything. If you're on your computer, you don't even have to download anything. It's a flash app. It'll open up a new window. You'll be able to listen and or talk. You can even try it out right now if you would like. The address again you just need to go to is www.freeconferencecallhd.com. You'll see it. Very simple. If you get confused, you can shoot me an email or what have you, but it should be very easy. And I tried it out just to see. It does work. Sound quality seems to be the same, so have fun. Shadow, we will go to him. I had 2 other things to share to wrap up with the guest just for clarity, but I want to check with Shadow because he was so patient. Did you have something you wanted to share, Shadow?
Yeah, when you were talking about language and how the guest, the doctor, had talked about it. I know a few people that are in linguistics, and I've seen that really, if you're in those fields, you tend to either work for the military
or teach schools. But like that comment that you said was very correct. And I just wanted to kind of second that, that's all.
I think Dr. Furnish did both, teach school and his experience in the military intelligence. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, a lot of times, even in those academic settings, they'll get their funding from the Department of Defense.
Excellent point. I'm remembering the colonel, I think it was Colonel Davis, he was being interviewed about the security leaks, and he's a professor at Howard, and he's got like 20 years of military experience and legal, and that's another field, law, where it's really about language and use of words. But he's got like 20, 30 years of military experience, and he's also, and no less, he is a white man who's a professor at Howard University, HBCU. So, yeah, I've seen that pattern repeated over and over. In my opinion, these are some very skilled, very dangerous white people. Folks like Dr. Furnish, you can see photographs of him. When I saw his photograph, and I'm thinking, this is a guy who has Army expertise. This is someone who's a trained killer, very refined white man. This is somebody who could kill you and then probably reside over the funeral, I suspect.
I think that's a lot of people have a image of the military of just them being grunts and soldiers or Navy SEALs, but the military is full of intellectuals at its top ranks. And even if the intellectuals aren't in the Army, they have the means to those intellectuals. Really, like I said, they're the ones funding most of them. In any field.
Yeah, I think that's like 2 days in a row of the suggestion that, white people are ignorant or not very competent. I'm very resistant to that. Individuals like Dr. Furnish, they're very informed, very well studied. He talked about his global travels and his PhD in Islamic studies, his skill with language. These folks, they spend a lot of time developing expertise on the best way to manage the plantation called Earth. Just with the language, because I might be wrong, folks, you can, use your own brain computer if what I'm saying about, I think, but even just in the past 2 months, just with the event that happened in Boston and the event that happened in London, just in the past 45 days, I would say it has become much more, Bill Maher, it has become a lot more acceptable to say things against Muslims, Islam, than to say like nigger, to say blatantly things that would be labeled as being white supremacist, racist. Just in my view, I think this is going to be more and more prevalent. If you need more information, think about if this is going to be the case where they're going to be talking about Muslims, but they're really talking about black people and or victims of racism. This is, I'm quoting a little bit, or reading a little bit rather, from Dr. Furnish. This is his article on the Boston bombers, the ideology behind the Boston Marathon bombing. And he writes, the video that Tamerlan Tsarnaev had linked on his social media sites has been described by Mother Jones, among others, as an Al-Qaeda prophecy, but that observation, while perhaps necessary, is woefully insufficient. The ideas of forces bearing black banners, in quotes, coming from the eastern part of the Islamic world into the Middle East proper and further west to conquer in the path of Allah is almost as old as Islam itself, enshrined in a number of sayings attributed to Islam's founder, Muhammad. There are literally thousands of hadiths in both Sunni and Shiite collections, second in Islamic doctrinal authority only to the Quran itself. dealing with topics ranging from the mundane to the bizarre. Much of Islamic eschatology, theorizing about the end of the world, derives from these alleged sayings of Muhammad, in particular those dealing with the right guided one sent by Allah to make the entire world Muslim with help from the returned prophet Jesus, quote unquote, before the end of time by militarily establishing a global caliphate. The video which Tamerlan Tsarnaev favored specifically draws upon this tradition. This video, almost the entirety of which is backgrounded with a soundtrack of Arabic Muslim chanting, is entitled The Emergence of Prophecy, Black Flags from Khorasan, and opens unsurprisingly with the flag or banner in question, a jet black one emblazoned in white with the Islamic profession of faith, which says there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. This is followed by slow motion clips of marching jihadists with AK-47s as the voiceover by Imran Hossein Nazir, a prominent cleric who opines often on Islamic eschatology and Mahdiism, warns that they demonize as terrorists anyone who supports Allah. It goes on from there, but this comes up repeatedly, black being a symbol of this jihadist Muslim reign of terror, and black being a prominent symbol in that. Now again, I might be incorrect, I could be wrong, but I have seen other reports where it's been this similar sort of linking, making, same thing we talked about yesterday, making black the face of terrorism. And I think most recently with the Woolwich incident, black people even being the face of what they call radical Islam, Muslim extremism, making black people the face of that as well. It just seems like everything, black people are becoming the focal point of everything, with so-called gay rights, black person at the center of that, even homophobia, they put black people at the center of that. Terrorism got black people at the center of that. Assata Shakur, what's going on now with Islam, they put black people at the center of that. And he also has a lot of articles talking about how Muslim and the practice of Islam and Muslim radicals, that this is a big problem in Africa, that this is spreading. I think Justice asked a couple questions based on some of the reports that he has about this. To me, it looks like black people becoming the face of everything that is defective, dastardly, threatening, and vile about the world. I could be wrong, but I will stick to the initial point. Just reminder about President Obama, about I think a lot of the bashing on Muslims, that is going to be increasingly code for and indirectly talking about black people. I'll mute my line. If there are other folks, if y'all have anything, the person that called in 8423, your line should be open. If anybody else, if you have anything you would like to share, you should get your hand up like in the next 15 minutes, since we should be back tomorrow for at least one program. Next 15 minutes, if you all won't have anything to share. The person 8423, your line should be open. Shadow, you are still with us.
Hi, yes. I worked in Saudi Arabia. I called earlier, spoke to the doctor. I worked in Saudi Arabia for 3 years and as a private contractor. And racism is stronger in Saudi Arabia than it is in many parts of the South. They have the exact same racial hierarchy as they do here. The people who run the country, they consider themselves Caucasian. They know that the original inhabitants of that land and North Africa in general were people of African descent, and they kind of came out of the Caucasus Mountains, which they know that the areas of Turkey, Armenia, Greece, and those areas, and occupied those lands. And they are the ones who control Islam. They control who goes in and out of the holy cities and the fatwas and all that stuff, and they have the money, the backing to do it, and they definitely have a racial hierarchy with the Caucasians on top and I guess you call it the mixed breeds in the middle, and the black Arabs at the bottom. When people leave Christianity and they think they're going to leave racism, it's going to be right there for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The person that called in from a block number, your line is open as well. I'm so glad that you shared that. I said that's really important. I think that global perspective and understanding that everywhere you go for it to be the same thing. How does that happen? That to me suggests that the white people who always end up being in charge everywhere you go, to me it suggests that they have some sort of code book. They have some sort of rules that are directly or indirectly updated, shared, communicated about how they are going to maintain domination over the people they say are not white. It has to be that way. At any rate, the person that called in from a block number, your line is open. I just wanted to remind folks, I would have included this in the sound clips that we began with. White people have just been saying that there is a new outbreak, and it's called MERS, the acronym Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. MERS. They just had a report on this last week. Now, to me, just that right there, the terms suggest white supremacy racism. I don't ever hear any flu. I hear Asian flu, West Nile virus. I hear all of that. I never hear Caucasian measles. I don't ever hear anything that gets attributed to whites, where it is a sickness, a disease, something to be feared. It's always non-white people. But that's the new one. And I think I included this report in the weekend compensatory call-in. The report that I heard about MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, the fear was that we don't know enough about how this disease, this contamination spreads. Our fear is that people coming to the Holy Land of Mecca, these would be Muslims, that they might come get this and then take it back all over the world and it will spread. And I just thought, wow, I mean, what are we... At any rate, I will hush. You can check this report out. It was on NPR. I'm sure it was widely reported, but Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, MERS, almost reminds me of the Africanized bees. The person from a block number, your line is open. Anybody else, just press *6 if you would like to participate.
Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
This is Shadow. I was just commenting about what you said about medicine always attaching non-white people to diseases. I work in the medical field, and before you get any kind of medical degree or certificate, you have to learn all the diseases, and racially they break it down. Like, you have to know who's more likely to get diabetes or a heart attack or a stroke or whatever. And the diseases that white people are more prone to, it's not put across like that. Not in the same way, so I totally agree. Also, this is real quick, that reminded me, have you been able to speak to Dr. Griff, Dr. McGriff or Dr. Griff?
Dr. McGriff, for folks who don't recall, he did what I thought was just a very profound piece on NPR in May. He's a doctor formerly a doctor in North Carolina. He did a piece where they have this project on NPR called the Race Card Project, and you use 6 words to talk about racism. That could be a counter-racist assignment. You can go to their website, the Race Card Project, and you can use 6 words and say anything you want about racism. And they put the card up on the site. Dr. Gregory McGriff, he filled out one of these cards, and he said, I think his card said, 55 miles per hour means you, black boy. Yeah, that's it. 55 miles per hour means you, black. I had to count. Those were his 6 words, and they did a whole piece on him on NPR. He was a doctor in North Carolina, and he explained what he meant. And he said, he's been academically successful. He went to quote unquote Ivy League school, top grades, top physician. And he said he feels like, he constantly has to watch himself to make sure that he doesn't get in trouble with white people, that he doesn't violate their rules. And he spent for me, he had two segments that really stood out. One, since it was just so-called Father's Day, he was talking about explaining to his son why, as a black male, he should have duplicate copies of his license and keep one in his visor. That way he won't have to make any sudden movements and perhaps be killed by a racist enforcement officer. And he was explaining how he taught this to his son. And I mean, on one hand, it's like, hooray, that's what we need, like honesty, talking to your children. But on the other hand, it's almost enough to bring you to tears. Like, that is what is required of you. Like, that's what we got to do. At any rate, so that was one. The other really profound moment, I thought, was he's talking about being a black doctor and having white patients. And that power that normally, people are kind of intimidated by doctors because they're so smart and they got so much power. And he says that he gets accused, or he had been accused at least once, of being uppity. That's the word he used. And you just got to go listen to it. It's incredible. They really break that down. He goes into the context around this. At any rate, they do this segment in May. I guess a few weeks after the report aired, he was asked to leave by the white people at the hospital in North Carolina. He said he had not had any disciplinary problems before. He had no issues. He had worked there for a while, great evaluations. And after that piece, they asked him to leave. And, he went into some other details about it just being a victim of racism. It was something. At any rate, he told me to stay in touch. He said he had obviously he's transitioning to a new job. It seemed like that worked out pretty well. He's moving to DC to practice there. So that's at least good news. But, he said to keep in touch with him and we can see about sharing down the road. He seemed like he had just a lot of stories about racism, white supremacy. He seemed less confused. He definitely seemed like a victim, like just hearing the things that he had to endure that didn't even make it into the art. Like, that's what he was saying. He was saying he had so many incidents that he could talk about. I mean, it was a similar feeling I've had before. Fascinating information, great. I'm glad I talked to him, but the circumstances deplorable. Racism, white supremacy is horrific and should be replaced immediately. I will mute my line.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with Russell Maroon Schultz?
No, sir.
He's got this book. It's called Maroon Implacable. And his name is Russell Maroon Schultz. He's a political prisoner. He was in the civil rights, black liberation movement in Philadelphia. And heard about him today, and it sounds extremely interesting, this book. He's been in solitary confinement for 30 years. People were talking about just how well the book is written, so I wanted to share that.
Where'd you hear about it at?
KPFK, the Pacifica. You ever listen to it?
Yep, I do. I was thinking Pumpkin, she's a big fan of KPFK, and I have been listening to a lot more KPFK of late. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, man. I was just not watching TV. It was radio. I listen to a lot of radio when I'm doing work and stuff. And I was listening to it, when I first found it a lot. Then I stopped listening to it. It kind of got a little bit, the information wasn't as good. But recently I've been listening more, and they got a couple of shows on there. Black, I definitely was going to ask you if you listen to KPFK and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm glad to hear they have some okay. You check it out. They have some black shows and stuff on there, and they bring out a lot of information like this. So another thing, I was reading someone had described religion as the way to remember it is ABC: action, belief, and confidence.
I think that's just that confidence part, like the action and then the belief and the confidence that you're going to get away with it, or so. I just think that's a good way to think about it. That just putting that confidence part in there. What else? Have you heard the Kanye West album?
I haven't heard the whole thing. I've heard bits and pieces.
Okay. Well, everybody's talking about it. Some people saying he done got. It's weird, but yeah, it's a big conversation, piece, and saying it's militant and anti-establishment, and but some of the stuff that I hear, I don't know. Some of the stuff is kind of spoon-fed, like I've heard on media outlets, but I guess that's to be expected. But also, people are just, saying that they're talking about it. What was I going to say? Really, I was just saying that, like, people are, they don't, especially around me, because they think I'm they don't know that much about how racism and white supremacy works, but when I come around, they want to talk about it, but they really don't know. They haven't done, they don't know about Dr. Wells and, or Nellie Fuller and stuff, but they're interested in talking about it, and this is, this album is getting them, just talking about it. So I guess that's a good thing, So I don't know if people are going to be hearing people discuss it. I think 'cause sometimes I don't go too much into detail, and I'm gonna try to since I know that people are gonna be talking about it, I said, okay, let me prepare what I'm gonna say and whatnot. So I think people might be hearing a lot about this album, and it's getting good reviews, and so if you people prepare a little something what they're gonna say, I'm sure it looks like you're gonna be given the opportunity to talk about race around this Kanye West album.
I was ahead of the curve on that one. Got my YouTube video up. Check that out. It's even got some of the new songs. New Slaves is at the end. Because I saw that coming. He had that article in the New York Times, and it coincidentally drops right when he and Kim Kardashian, racist suspect, have their child. Like, yeah, you're going to have a layup. That's going to be an easy one. If you want to talk to anybody that's probably 40, maybe even 45 and down, they're going to probably, have a word or two to say about Kanye West in some way, shape, or form. So definitely have what you're going to say, because that'll be an easy one if you want to push it to racism. Super, super easy.
As far as your guest, yeah, you said that you had that prepared, that psychological profile. And if you could say that again, because I think it bears repeating, and just that, not no whole long thing, but just whatever that psychosis was.
Persecution complex. I have a psychology degree. Not that that means anything. Victim of racism. Didn't get me an extra piece of cornbread or nothing. But, we did talk about this. Persecution complex. That is basically, I think it is in the DSM-5. I have to double check. I'm pretty sure it was in the DSM-4 though. But it is a form of psychosis when a person falsely believes that people are out to get them. And this is a repetitive thing where they are constantly thinking that people are out to get me, folks are targeting me, I'm being threatened by others, this constant and false belief that they're being attacked. And the report, I thought this was applicable to our guest and many other white people, but especially our guest. Just even before he got on the program, I saw this pattern of accusing other people of threatening him, accusing him of things, trying to harm him just over and over and over again. Even when he said on a program that with regards to Muslims, he has not been mistreated by a Muslim, even though he writes about them as though they're the biggest threat in the universe. But the persecution complex, just the snippet that I thought was important, talking about the boost, the fourfold increase in the number of cases since the 1950s. It says that over the course of the 20th century, fantasies of persecution became the defining modern delusion, suggests a pair of studies on long-term trends in psychosis. And I think it also bears repeating. Many white people have talked about these studies overwhelmingly are skewed towards white people, meaning that when they say they were studying folks, it tends to be that they were studying white people, whether it's directly, indirectly, they forgot to include non-white people, there was no non-white people around. They are studying white people when they have these sort of reports, and they have a white male pictured at the top of the report. So my view is that they are definitely talking about white people, and I see this trend skyrocketing along with the anti-blackness. And I guess we had a guest on before, I forgot his name, but he had a guest on before. That was his thesis, that this has been skyrocketing over the last 10 years. This boom in white people saying that they are victims of racism, that they are being persecution complex. I will mute my line.
Every time I hear Alex Jones, and whenever I've listened to him and these so-called libertarians, that's what you hear. It's like, oh man, I hear that. Like it's they're the victims. They're now it's white slavery. It's we're outnumbered. Man, it's going down. Like it's so much, man. Anyway, MERS. That when I heard that you brought that up, it reminded me of that. What I thought it reminded me of like this uranium depletion. Like I remember hearing that people were having respiratory problems due to them using. Due to the weapons that they were using in those conflicts and those conflicts out there in the what they call the Middle East and the Arab world. So I'm just thinking, like, did they cause this respiratory problem and then name it and give it the name after these non-white people? I mean, man, that's cold. They caused the problem and then name it after them. It's not funny, but
that totally sounds like the type of thing that racists would do and would get a kick out of. Like, oh, we really got them. MERS. Like, I could totally see that happening. I mean, that's the type of opposition we're dealing with.
I seen the clip where Bill Maher, the reporter that broke the story on, Snowden's story in the Guardian. I can't think of his name. I think it's Green something. He was on the Bill Maher show. Did you catch that? Where he basically told him that he said that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have been, I think, up to date on Bill Maher, so I probably saw it. Let me go back and just look at his name. If it was in the last month or so, yes, I'm positive I saw it.
Okay, his Greenwich, I think might be his name. I can't think of it right now, but he brought the story out in the Guardian and he's been going around doing interviews and whatnot, talking about Snowden. And anyway, he was on the Bill Maher show, and Bill Maher was like, he told Bill Maher, he said, I can't really say it because that's why I was thinking maybe if you had heard it, but he basically told him that he said that you're trying to justify the things that your government is doing that's wrong, and basically saying, oh, it's because those people are primitive out there. Because Bill Maher is always talking about this clash of civilizations. Like he pushes that hard. Because I don't listen to it that often, but every time I hear it, I hear him kind of bringing that out, saying that the Muslims are just. The reason why we're having all these problems with these Muslims is because they backward-thinking people, basically. And so, this reporter, journalist, he told him that he said that that's basically that's your way of your way of supporting and reasoning what's going on. You can, it's like easy. Oh, those people were just backwards. Muslims. Oh, they believe in, this, that, and so he kind of, it's got a lot of hits on the internet, and basically say, Bill Maher gets told off by, this guy Greenwich or whatever his name is. But the real point I wanted to make was that he's pushing this he goes hard on the I don't see how he gets away with it, because he's like anti-Muslim, Islam. Like he talks about it like it's just like, and the people, he basically kind of like he's justifying like the stuff that goes on over there, man. Like he's like, it's a clash of civilizations. That's all it is. These people, we just can't get along with them. They have no, they have nothing to do with the Western world. We're civilized and they're not civilized. We're never going to see eye to eye. We're always going to have problems with them, and it's fundamentally to do with their beliefs. And the guy was bringing out. He was saying, Christians. Hello?
Oh, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. He was saying that Christians are like dangerous, as far as they do a lot of, they do a lot of killing and stuff. And he made some point. Bill Maher was like, well, not in the 20th century. And he was like, he brought out some things. He was like, you ever heard of? And he brought, like, he said a situation like this still goes on, These so-called Christians, over there killing and stuff, and saying it's out of Christianity and whatnot. So, man, Bill Maher was getting mad too. He was like, he was getting mad. He was. This guy is he had his facts together. He had his stuff together. So he couldn't really, everything Bill Maher was saying, he had a rebuttal and a logical one. And he just got mad, like he really was trying to push it to say that it's a liberal thing. Oh, you liberals just want to say all religions are the same, but really they're not. And he gave some justification of why liberals think like that, and that's when the journalist guy said what he said. Saying that no, it's not. We're not trying to see no part in this, guys. The fact is that So anyway, I just thought like I said, the point is that he's big propagandist on. He's anti-Muslim. Like he don't have nothing good. And he gets away with it. It's supposed to be liberal or something like that. Like, wow. I don't know what that stuff means. Liberals and stuff like that, like what does that mean? I don't even know what that stuff means. Like the liberals that I hear talking, or I read some posts that they put up, they sound worse. I mean, like these people sound like Nazis or something to me. Like you can't sound worse. It's like when we take the government back over and all this stuff, and the Constitution, like it's some type of holy book or something. Like these people sound worse than. I mean, are they supposed to be who black people are aligning themselves with?
I did see that program with Glenn Greenwald, I believe that's his name, on Bill Maher. This was just 2-3 weeks ago. I do remember watching that saying, this comes up all the time, like the sound clip that I played with Bill Maher, where he was talking about how wild and dangerous Muslims are and Islam is on the whole. It was even more recent than this segment with Glenn Greenwald. But I do have the sound clip, so we can take a listen and hear what they say and then offer a little feedback. This is from just within the past 30 days. Bill Maher, Glenn Greenwald.
In Republican America this week, Benghazi was all the rage. If you watched Fox News, this story was like, you know, they saved Hitler's brain times men walk on the moon. It was the biggest story ever. And if you listen to normal people, it was just some partisan dopes trying to make political hay off some dead bodies. I still don't know what the scandal is. Does anyone?
Didn't they have a point?
No.
You don't think so? So
what is the point?
Well, the way I see it is that one of the problems that Republicans have had on this is that lots of people in the media, and here probably, don't like Republicans. And so the Washington Post, for example, this week said, well, you know who's talking about Benghazi? It's people who go to Chick-fil-A and it's white rich guys. You know?
Right.
But, you know, if a white rich guy who likes...
I didn't know what that meant. That was stupid.
Right, but if a white rich guy like...
Let's not go there.
Well, no, but it is because everyone has reported on this by saying, well, Republicans keep banging on about this. But
well, they do.
Yeah, right. But if Republicans say 2 + 2 = 4, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong.
Okay, tell me what the scandal is.
Well, what
I honestly want to know, because I heard what a guy testified that he heard when there was the attack on the embassy that an attack was going on. So he called the Air Force or somebody in the military to send jets, and they said, I'm sorry, they couldn't get there in time. The end.
Well, no, that's...
Tell me what
I'll tell you what the scandal is. I mean, the problem is that this arose about 6 weeks before the election, when everybody was desperate to protect their side. So Fox News was, this is the worst scandal ever. MSNBC was, Obama did absolutely nothing wrong. He acted perfectly as always. And the reality was something in between, which was a U.S. ambassador was killed. There's only been 6 times in our nation's history when that happened. The president went on the air, and other people did too, and made statements that proved to be untrue about why the attack took place, that it was a reaction to this film. That's just a reality. Whether they were lying or just in error, the statements they made it was untrue. That
it was a fluid situation.
No, but it's still. But when the government goes on the air and says things that prove to be untrue, that is something that needs to be investigated. And it was in a place where President Obama and NATO had gone and invaded and bombed and changed the regime. I'm not saying it's a huge scandal, but there certainly are questions when the government and political officials 6 weeks before an election say things about a major event like that that prove to be untrue. There should be investigations, even if the Republicans are doing it for political ends. The same was true when Democrats were investigating Bush officials and saying these are the worst scandals ever. Yeah, Republicans were saying nothing happened.
You know what Dick Cheney said 2 days ago? He said, when we were there on our watch, we were always ready on 9/11.
Well,
I swear to God, without irony.
Right.
That's what he said on the anniversary. Well, there wouldn't be an anniversary if he had been doing his job in the first place.
And the other thing that wasn't mentioned there in what Glenn said was the CIA. The CIA's initial assessment of what happened in Benghazi was that it was the result of these other attacks that were going on in other, around the Arab world. And here's the thing. This is a prototypical Washington scandal. It's a scandal about a memo. The big bombshell that was released by ABC News was 12 edits to the memo. That's what we're down to. Republicans are so desperate for a scandal that they're now fighting over whether or not the talking points were massaged properly before Susan Rice went on Meet the Press. The underlying scandal, what Republicans are trying to imply, and the reason that the mainstream media isn't picking it up, they're implying that either Barack Obama himself, the President of the United States, decided not to protect that embassy, that compound, decided not to help them, right? Or that they created this entire cover-up to stop people from knowing that they haven't gotten rid of every single member of Al-Qaeda. And neither of those two things is either true or plausible.
The scandal here is that the media, as it did during the Bushes, sides with power. The media did not want to investigate this, and so it reported a process story right from the beginning. What was the first story? Mitt Romney attacks the president.
What should they have reported? What is the scandal? You still don't tell me.
Well, for a start,
I knew what the scandal with Watergate was. I knew it wasn't Iran-Contra. I can tell you what it was, what the crime was.
Well, actually,
what's the crime?
Well, you didn't know what the
Something bad happened in the world. Obama's supposed to micromanage everything that happens in the world. He's got 4 million people under his charge.
So you don't think that when a U.S. ambassador is killed and there are people within the State Department saying that they were asking for help and not getting it, and that the U.S. government went onto the world stage for a week and made claims about what happened that turned out not to be true, that doesn't merit any investigation?
All right, let's move on. No, I don't, and I'm bored with it. Let's move on.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. When a lot of the argument is over why the riot happened. Was it because it was the anniversary of 9/11? Or were they pissed off because, remember, at the time there was this movie that was made by some guy, I think he lived out here.
Right.
It was called Innocence of the Muslims or anything.
He's in jail now.
Okay, right. But anytime you burn a Koran or draw a cartoon of the Prophet or whatever, there are riots. And isn't this a soft bigotry of low expectations? You know, the way we accept that. Of course, if you make a movie that insults the Prophet or says something bad about Allah, there's going to be a riot. This is insane. We should not accept this. Well, and when you see what happened like in Syria, we found out recently the rebels are fundamentalists. They're not people who are on our side. Every time something happens where we overthrow a Muslim government, this Arab Spring, Egypt, it happened, I mean, Iran years ago. It seems Afghanistan, the Taliban took over. It seems like it's worse. I know dictatorships are bad, but theocracies are actually dictatorships themselves, aren't they?
So I think Americans have a problem thinking about this sometimes because, and I include myself and British people, because the revolution that happened here was great. And very rarely is that the case in the world. You know, you have this revolution in America in which the British fight the British and then they codify classical liberal values into a constitution, and it's great. But that's not how it goes down normally. Normally there's bloodshed and it's horrible, and especially in the Middle East, what they want to replace their dictatorships with, if you look at the polling, is Sharia law.
Exactly.
But the revolution in the U.S. was great unless you were a slave, and then there was a war in which 600,000 Americans had to die to make it better.
No,
so the revolution isn't always great. The French Revolution, there were beheadings, right? Revolutions are messy,
yes.
and if you want people to have democracy, it can be messy.
Right, it can be messy, but the slavery point, I think, is cheap, if I'm honest.
You mean the revolution in the United States that produced a government that included slaves, that included enslaved Africans, it's a cheap shot to include that in the narrative? I mean, that is part of the narrative.
No, the point is that if you're looking for perfection in the 18th century, you're not going to find it. What the Americans did was a massive step forward. It wasn't perfect. It was resolved in a civil war that was bloody and awful. But if we're going to write off the greatest revolution and the greatest constitution in world history because it was imperfect and it was flawed, then we might as well all go home.
But the point is that in the Middle East, we're saying that these are also imperfect revolutions. No, I agree with Bill. Whenever the U.S. goes in and tries to impose our vision of democracy in that region, we fail. We took Mossadegh out in Iran, and we ended up with the Shah, and then we ended up with...
But that's not our fault. It's not our fault what came out. We didn't go into Egypt.
Well, we
wound up with the Muslim Brotherhood.
We didn't go into Egypt. We were supporting and propping up Mubarak for 30 years, even as we were cheering for all the Tahrir Square demonstrators as though we were on their side. It was our government that kept Mubarak in power, just like we've done across the entire Muslim world. And it's amazing for you to say that, well, look at all these Muslims. The minute you give them a little bit of freedom, they go wild and they start being all violent. How can you be a citizen of the United States, the country that has generated more violence and militarism in the world over the last 5 or 6 decades, and say, look at those people over there, they are incredibly violent? We play a significant role in what has been happening in the Middle East because we've been interfering and dominating that region in order to have access to the oil.
I wasn't talking about violence. I was talking about theocracy. That doesn't happen here.
No, well, okay, that doesn't happen here, but at the same time, Iran isn't invading lots of other countries and occupying them for a decade, nor are fundamentalist Muslim countries the way the United States is. So these things are interlinked because we are continuously interfering in that part of the world. And so to say...
Really, it's all our fault?
It's not all our fault, but when you send your military for 6 straight decades into other countries to bomb them, kill their children and women and innocent men, prop up dictators, yeah, you take responsibility for your actions and say, to the extent that that region...
That religion goes back 1,000 years before our revolution, so I don't think we can take all the blame.
I don't think we should. I think we should take a lot of it. And there's lots of bodies and corpses that have been piled up in the name of Christianity and Judaism as well.
Not recently.
Have you heard of the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza for the last 50 years, motivated in part by extremist views of Judaism, or the wars in Europe, or the fact that there were generals in the United States saying we have to go and invade and destroy Iraq, a country of 26 million people, because our God is bigger? Lots of religions, not just Islam, produce violence.
Well, if I could just make one quick point about Egypt.
That silly liberal view that all religions are alike because it makes you feel good.
No, it makes you feel good to say our side is better. The people over there are primitive and violent.
No, it makes you feel good to put a crown on your head and say, I'm a good person. How do I prove that?
You get to ignore the responsibility that your own government has for the violence and instability in the world by saying, look, it's that primitive religion over there that's to blame.
Yep, I remember that. That was even Mr. Maher's crowd, which is normally very biased to what he has to say. I mean, it's his program, so of course they're going to support him. But even his crowd was cheering like, yeah, that's yep, that's exactly. It's the same view that Dr. Furnish had. Dr. Furnish quotes Bill Maher on his page and saying he's one of the few that tells it like it is and is not giving you a lot of that liberal BS. And I mean, the terms that it was like from the beginning to the end, it was racism, white supremacy. They weren't, in fact, Bill Maher at the very beginning when they were saying, well, isn't this a lot of white guys that are complaining about this non-white president? And he says, oh, come on now, we don't want to go there. And the guy's even like, well, I mean, isn't that what it is, right? It's like these white guys that are saying that this non-white president didn't do the right thing. And then it goes from there to Susan Rice didn't do the right. So we're still at the same place. White people complaining about a non-white person did something incorrect. And then we go from there to these primitive, savage, I mean, it's racism, white supremacy, just not using the words racism, white supremacy. But yes, that was a very significant clip on the Bill Maher program. Thank you for recalling that one, 909.
I mean, it was slick, though. Bill Maher is I think he's refined, man. Like, if that would have been because he switched, he changed. First it's about this, and then when he gets, rebuttal on that, then he switches, then it's about this, and then when he gets rebuttal about that, now it's that religion. I mean, it's like, what are you talking about?
And then it went to name calling, like when he couldn't win, and it was just, you're just a silly liberal.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's standard. It's the same thing. Persecution complex. I feel like it's the exact same thing when I cannot impose my will, when I cannot use my words to confound and convince people that my worldview is accurate and to get them to co-sign with what I'm saying, name call and or accuse them of mistreating me somehow. I feel like it's just two different sides of the same coin. In fact, I think he did that twice in the segment when they were disagreeing with him on Benghazi. I'm bored with it. I'm moving on. And then when he couldn't convince, when the guy kept coming back with logic, like, nope, white people, and he was even very codified. I didn't say they should take all the blame, but I think they should take a big chunk. When he came back, and it's just, you're silly. I mean, yeah, Bill Maher is high up on my list of, wow, this is a really dangerous, skilled racist suspect, and he does all this under the guise of satire. That's another one of your key points. He does all of this under the guise of satire.
Yes. First, he couldn't understand what the scandal was, but when he was told the scandal, clearly told like what the so-called scandal was, and the fact that the guy brought up like this is life and death we're talking about. Okay, now this is justification for bombings and changes of regimes and the people dying. You know what I'm saying? Then he wanted to know. He claimed that he wanted to know what the scandal was or what the problem was or whatever. But then when he was told what the problem was, he just said, "I don't care." I don't care. That was his I don't care. That was it. I'm like, I don't care. Well, that's what he should have, like, you know, if he was keeping it real, he would have said that in the beginning. Like, yeah, I understand what it is, and I don't care. You know, we can lie all we want, long as we get the job done. Wow.
I watch this program every week. It's pretty fascinating what they talk about, and that's standard. Like the way that he talks about Muslims and Islam, that's a pretty regular thing. I think they brought up the Woolwich attack because the suspects also Muslims as well. I posted the articles online yesterday from the website that Esther Stanford Kosei shared, the National African Organization, and they were interviewing black people out on the streets, and they were talking about how hostile things have been for them as black people since the Woolwich incident, the hacking of Lee Rigby in London. And this was just, you know, she talked to quite a few of them. It was about a 10-minute interview, and even one black female saying that a white person passed her and said, called her a nigger and told her to get the F out of there. And it was, you know, I said when I was talking to Esther Stanford Kosei, I hadn't heard this. All I've been hearing is Muslims have been attacked. Mosques have been attacked. It's been a huge increase in what they've been saying, hate crimes. I suspect this is just racism, white supremacy attacking Muslims. And in the sound clip I had, the one, it was a female because they were making excuses for the trifling behavior of whites. And they were saying that, it's because of the economy, that, you know, the economy's going bad and that's why they're doing this. And it was a non-white female. She was a Muslim. And she said, well, what does white people not having any money, what does that have to do with them mistreating me because I wear a head wrap? And it was just kind of like a moment of silence, like, oh, yeah, what does that have to do with anything? And she said, yeah, can you explain that? Like, what does you not having any money have to do with me being mistreated because I have on a head wrap? Why do I have to be isolated? No one wants to be around me on the bus. People mistreat me and what have you because I have a head wrap. What does that have to do with you not having any money? And I just think it's going to be more. This is going to be more and more acceptable. If you're hearing Bill Maher doesn't get called out, I don't hear Bill Maher get called out. He makes those sort of comments about Islam all the time, and sometimes the audience laughs and they snicker and joke. I think it's going to be more and more acceptable. He's supposed to be one of the good white guys, so I can't even imagine. I mean, if you got down in Tennessee, you got white people cheering, publicly cheering, where they're being recorded, cheering and laughing and celebrating mosques being burned. Man, anti-blackness, man, anti-blackness rising.
You said it. You said it, man. Oh, man. The cows. Man, yeah, you said it, man. You can't say it enough, man. People don't want to take it seriously, or don't understand, or think something, whatever they thinking. It's because just like there is no satire. You do not understanding like what's really going on. If people will, they can pull the wool over your eyes. You feel what I'm saying? The wolf in sheep's clothing, which is Bill Maher. You feel what I'm saying? That's what it is. If you don't have that clip you played was a people need to have that clip and as an exercise in rhetoric and some type of just understand like what just happened there, how slick that really was, you know. I mean, just all the logical fallacies that came out in that piece, and you know the average person is not catching that. But that sentiment is how you get people clapping at a mosque burning, and nobody thinks that is outrageous. I mean, man, like I said, you cannot say it enough. You can't say it enough, man.
You were the first person I ever heard say that jokes are grievances, so he is a comedian.
Absolutely. we're fortunate. We're fortunate to have, the cows, man. I mean, it's just, I don't know. But action, man. Action is what's needed, But in that confidence, that's why I like that last part, the confidence, the ABC, action, belief, confidence. Have confidence that you know what you're talking about. Like you don't have to, because Gus, like the other white guy. I don't know if you guys seen the clip, but it was a black female talking to him, and she brought up the point of the revolution being a great thing. Like that's freaking preposterous, man. She said, I don't know how many people died in that 600,000 people, man. You feel what I'm saying? And at the end of it, slavery was still like going down. You know what I'm saying? Like this thing was crazy. And you got this guy talking this nonsense, and then the black female brought out the points, and then he said. She said, I didn't discount the Constitution. He said, you can't just throw out the Constitution because, she said, I didn't say I threw out the Constitution. Yes, you did. Like, he just going to tell her, so I'm just saying, like, having that confidence to inform people and the confidence to know that, like, this is, I'm not, I don't know. At least with black people, white people try to shut you down, but it's having that confidence. Like Gus showed today with the program, it's something about that something about it seems like childish, like young. Like, I'm gonna get you before you get me, and then he just kept interrupting. Like, something about that just seemed like, man, dude, is that how grown people behave? What's going on? You throwing a tantrum? It's just wow. And then you gotta be an adult in that situation. That should give you some confidence. Like, okay, you got to go. Well. You keep saying you got to go, but yet you still talking. I got to put you on mute for you to hang up. This is how white people talk, man. They won't let you talk. They'll tell you, and if you disagree with them, so let's just have that confidence, man. Like if you you ran into the cows by whatever. You was researching it, just recognize, like, you're fortunate, man, So use it. Use the information and be confident about it. And warn people or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Sticking with asking questions can do a lot because you should be able to confidently ask a question because you're not making a statement. It should be very rare when you find yourself in an environment where asking questions is a problem. If you are in such an environment, that is a very dangerous place if asking questions is a problem. But no one, particularly if it's a setting where you have asked to interview someone, shouldn't be any problem asking questions. So that's one way that you can definitely remain confident, or should, be able to remain confident. I know the system of white supremacy does a lot to erode that confidence so that we don't ask questions and that we are fearful when we do ask our questions. But, just go ahead, ask. If they don't want to answer, that's fine too. That's an answer, as Mr. Fuller has said too. If they don't want to answer your question, that right there is a response, and you make note of it, that they did not want to respond to the question, like when he didn't want to tell Justice what his ultimate goal in life was. He didn't want to share that. Make note of that. Did not want to share ultimate life objective. Duly noted. No problem at all. It's words, man. Words. So much of it just boils down to words. Just being very attentive to the words that people use when you're having conversations, how they answer questions, if they don't answer questions, words that they use. Even him saying, when asked about the Boston bombing suspect, do they use the term suspect? If we're talking about a crime, do they reference the individuals as suspects, or do they go ahead and make a presumption of guilt? But, you know, he wouldn't just say that they were white the way he did the talk radio hosts in Atlanta. He said they were white Muslim. He kept adding things on, just simple things like that. And then it went to an accusation. Same thing, even in the clip, I think it happened several times when the accusation, the racist suspect, he accused the non-white female speaker of throwing the Constitution out. Another one, persecution. It's like, wait a minute now. I just, you know, let's have a truthful acknowledgement that we did have slavery, i.e. white supremacy, racism in operation, and that, you know, that should not be minimized or discounted. And in fact, that should be put, you know, front and center in any dialogue that we have about this period of time. Unless we don't want to be ahistorical, do we? You know, what's the problem? And you get accused of throwing out the Constitution, a treasonous act, I might add.
That's cheap. Like, who are you talking to? You know, like, you know, black people, man, we got to put up with a lot of psychological attacks. Because I know she probably would, you know, have done backhand him or something. I mean, that's just, that's cheap. Like, whoa, you talking about slavery? I mean, that's cheap. I mean, like, I will slap you in the mouth, dude. You know what I'm saying? Oh, that's the TV. You talking crazy right now, man. You know, but we gotta be calm and collected and the whole night. I know she was probably, her heart was about to fall out of her chest, possibly. You know, I know she was hot about that. Like, what? This fool just said that was cheap, and then just said some craziness about the 1800s not being perfect. Oh wow! But I did want to ask you, because like I said, the cow, you know, we always talked about like all this surveillance, man, like, you know, this new Xbox One, and their slogan is, we're always listening, we're always on. It's like, you know, with this Snowden thing come out with all this data mining and stuff like that, like we talked about that on the cows too. Like what man, like what in the what do you think? Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. What do you think? Like all this data, like they just know everything. They want to know everything about you. Always listening. They're recording all your information. The Xbox One is always on. It's always listening to any conversation going on in your house. It says even on low battery, like when it's just on idle or whatever. It's just recording everything that's going on in the house. Man, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think that's for? What are they gonna do with all that information?
I wish, man, if ever there was a time, I think if I have this sound clip, we might be able to, you know, I can be lazy and constructive. I love being lazy and constructive. If this is a sound clip, I will answer the question with a sound clip. We should be back tomorrow at minimum 8 p.m. with a racist suspect on the program. I'm not sure if we will have two programs. That I still haven't got confirmation. Just kind of have to. I'll let you know when I know. We're in the same boat, man. Same boat at the bottom. You know as much as I know about the other program. If it happens, I'll post on the Black Talk Radio page and other spots as soon as I get information. If it doesn't happen, then we will just have the one program, and that'll be at the normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, and 5 p.m. Pacific. Tomorrow evening should be a white person. Looking forward to it. Always great having white people on the program. The free HD number, I have been told, worked well, which I thought it would. I tried it before the program, so that should work. I'll go through that a few more times so that the protocol is down, and then if you get confused, you can email or what have you. But it should be pretty easy once you go to the page. And again, if you have an iPhone or smartphone or, whatever, it should work. It should work very easy. It should be a clear connection, and you can talk. If you want to participate, if you are in the UK, if you're in Japan, if you're in South Africa, Scandinavia, whatever, it should work. Or the States, right down the road, it should work too. Just go to the site. I'll put it on Facebook. Use the flash phone, and it should work. It's free. You can listen. You can talk. should make it very easy for folks to participate. You won't have to fight with Skype anymore. Let's see. All right. I'm looking to see if we have our answer to the question about the data mining. One thing I will share while I'm continuing to search, there's so many sound clips. I have been snickering to myself over and over and over again for about the last week, since they've been talking all about this data mining, and they're snooping on us. They listen to your phone calls and emails and whatever else they're doing, which should not be news. I wanted to, if I have it, I should read that. I should definitely do that. I wanted to read Leonetta McClain. She has an article about them eavesdropping on Martin Luther King Jr.'s phone in the 60s. And I was just going to use that to compare and contrast and say that for black people, victims of racism, we have been under surveillance since like the beginning of racism, white supremacy. This is not news. This is not strange. This is the everyday existence for victims of racism, white supremacy. But she has this great article that she wrote in the 80s. I do have the clip, so this clip will answer your question about what they're going to do with all of this information. I mean, we're talking untold volumes of information, but I'll read this report from Leonetta McClain on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and them having tapped his phone and having him under surveillance. Okay, got it right here. This is again from her book, which is fantastic. I'm almost done. I'm going to write a review. It's A Foot in Each World, Essays and Articles by Leonetta McClain, edited by Clarence Page. Her report from January 15th, 1984. Curious, can't undo King's heroism. Today is the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in its way a holy day for blacks. Dr. King's heroism and power to stir remain with me and millions of other people of all colors who seek and work for the goodness and justice, though they may never find it. The nonviolent teachings, the valor, the love of Dr. King remain as surely as the remembrance of the sight of him, gesturing, enunciating, and rising up physically at the lectern as if to soar along with the crescendo of his awesome message. This is the first time this day has arrived with deserved national recognition, although the official federal holiday will not take effect until 1986 on the third Monday of January. After 15 years of oversight, Congress last October finally passed legislation making Dr. King's birthday the 10th legal federal public holiday. The legislation was originally introduced within days of his assassination in April 1968. In death, as in life, the perseverance espoused by Dr. King ultimately frustrated his maligners. Yet one of their ringleaders, Senator Jesse Helms, Republican in North Carolina, could not let the matter come to a close without vilifying Dr. King as an action-oriented Marxist, in quotes. Worse, Helms tried to impart some honor to his true intent by decrying the cost of yet another paid holiday for federal workers. And, most unforgivable, he sought to have the courts lift the seal on FBI bugs and wiretaps of Dr. King, shamelessly disregarding the family's desire and agreement with the government that they be sealed for 50 years. There is an issue on those tapes. It is, how solid are one's heroes? Curiosity would have you wonder what is in them that is so spurious that would be so calamitous if revealed. What is suspected about the contents of the tapes already gives them negative inference, a legal term essentially meaning that the absence of proof that they are not damaging becomes the proof that they are. The tapes reportedly contain snippets revealing that the amazing marcher and preacher was also an amazing womanizer. I believe it was Jesse Jackson years ago who brushed aside the sexual innuendos with a remark to the effect that if indeed Martin could have done all that marching and all that preaching and still run around, he was surely a king. On this, his birthday, I respond with a similar, so what? Curiosity has me itching to know what is in the tapes, yet I respectfully grant the King family's right to and wish for privacy in perpetuity if necessary. Sources with even the slightest notion of the tape's contents warn that a revelation might undo Dr. King's image and perhaps some of his social good that, besides the embarrassment to his family, bigots would have cause to revel. But a crack in one's idol is not cause to smash it, to denounce it, and turn away. Such is the price paid by public people in their private lives, or sometimes in their public lives, since the most fascinating twist on the story is that then Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, who is perceived as having been in step with civil rights, authorized, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, who is perceived as having been in step with civil rights, authorized the eavesdropping. Senator Edward Kennedy, having to lower himself in acrimonious debate with Helms, defended his late brother. If he were alive today, he would be the first person to say it was wrong to wiretap Martin Luther King. And I think that were Dr. King alive, he would be the first to forgive the authorization. Such was the manner of the public man in life, and such will be throughout time. What Dr. King did publicly was to shame this nation into searching its conscience and giving to a people what should have been theirs anyway. He flung words so mighty they pierced the hardest hearts and brought about civil rights legislation. They are what will last. What he did in private will not even on tape. This is again from January 15th, 1984. Leonida McClain, victim of racism, white supremacy. We will be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. Should be a racist suspect. I will post the description and all that jazz later this evening, and I will go over the details again tomorrow on the program about how you can dial in on the free conference line if you don't have a phone, or if you don't want to use your minutes, or if you, whatever the reason, if you're outside the states and it's, international dialing or whatever the case may be, we will hook you up and go over the details again so that you can dial in, you can use it to listen or participate. Should make it very easy, and hopefully we will get more international folks to chime in. Would be grand to hear from other non-white people in different parts of the world about what they're experiencing, what they're seeing, and something that I'm going to be paying attention to. I think the anti-blackness, I just think it's another wrinkle. Like I said, it looks like black people are becoming the center of everything vile. Everything that is threatening the white way of life globally. Black people becoming the face of terrorism, Assata Shakur, the Woolwich incident. Black people at the center of the so-called gay rights movement, Jason Collins, and even at the center of the so-called homophobic movement as well, pretty regularly. Roy Hibbert even recently. It just seems like everything that is ugly and vile and bad, black people are becoming the face of that. And even a lot of this rhetoric about the evils of Islam, I believe a lot of that is just going to be a codified way of speaking about racism, white supremacy, and black people specifically doing so in a manner that does not arouse as much detection and is more acceptable in the current climate. Like I said, just in the last 45 days with the Boston Boston bombing and then the Woolwich incident, huge change globally. Just those images alone of having two black males with images of them having bloodied hands and machetes where they've killed a white soldier. And saying that they're Muslims, they're doing this in the name of Allah. Wow. We will answer 909's question. This will wrap us up. The Creator, it has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. Help us all to remain confident when speaking with any and all white people. Ask questions, remain confident, and pay attention to each and every word used. This is an answer to 909's question about what white people intend to do with all of this information that they are collecting and storing about each of us. Make sure I get it in. It's for me, it's worth getting, even if I have to say it a second time. I snickered quite a bit over the past few days, wondering, Irritated Genie, the people, if they're still people that listen to this program, if you listen to Genie, or if you remember Irritated Genie, who admitted to being a Homeland Security employee, man,